Could we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Mr. Rowena,
Here.
Ms. Wells,
Here.
Ms. Jordan Byron,
Present.
Mr. Cantor,
Here.
Mr. Patches, Ms. Langalis,
Here.
Ms. Tabachnik,
Here.
Mr. Williams,
Present.
and Mr. Schulman.
Here.
Okay.
Okay. I want to start off by apologizing for our last meeting. I let the hour get much too late. It was a combination, I think, of my poor judgment and the staff just putting too much on the agenda. But I also want to thank you for staying with it. Despite the late hour, we had a number of very important items to work on, and I thank you for sticking with it. Okay.
Lou, just to that point, thank you for the apology, but I would very, very much prefer having an extra meeting to staying at a meeting until almost, midnight. Because by the time we're discussing the last matters, which are always the most important ones on the whole agenda, I'm on my last nerve. You know what I mean? It's very hard to.
I agree with you, and we've all said this before. After that many hours, it's harder to concentrate, to pay attention, and we don't necessarily make our best decisions. So I'm on the same page with you. I just have to be more sensitive to it in the future, and I will be. And fortunately, it's my expectation we're not going to have that problem at all this evening. First item, review and action on applications 03-14 SP Maritime Village 1 LLC 1719 Day Street, District 2, Block 58, Lots 8 and 44. Bond release for completed mixed-use development. Report and recommended action.
I don't see any of the Spinnaker folks on, but essentially this is your typical projects completed. COs have been issued, so they're at the point of just requesting their bond back.
Okay. Is there a motion to return the bond to Spinnaker? Okay, I see Hector's hand raised. Tammy, I see your hand raised also. I take that as a second. Any discussion? All right, if not, I think we can do this with a raise of hands. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, it's unanimous. Moving on to our second item, 2023-05 SPR John R. Conti III, 91 Witch Lane, District 6, Block 32C, Lot 21. Convert existing structure to a detached accessory dwelling unit. Report and recommend action. Is there someone here representing Mr. Conte?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Please go ahead.
Sure. I'm John Conti. I'm the applicant as well as the owner of 91 Witch Lane, along with my wife. And I guess I'll just give you a brief overview of the proposed plan.
Please do.
Okay. Should I share my screen here? Let's see. Can everybody see this screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so first off, this is an existing conditions survey. This is Witch Lane over here. North is this way on the left side of the page here. And if you're familiar with the area, Highland Avenue would be up here. It's close to the intersection of Highland and Witch.
Mm-hmm.
This is the subject parcel. It's a rear lot. on the north side of Witch Lane. This is the access way portion here, and this is the, I guess, the flag portion of the lot back here. There's a driveway right now that serves a lot off of Witch Lane, comes back this way, and there's an existing house here, which Mr. Baker, correct me if I'm using the wrong terminology, but I guess this would be a legally non-conforming house. It's outside of the zoning regulations setbacks for a rear lot in this zone, which is the A residence zone. The proposed plan is to leave this existing structure where it is, and as the application says, convert it to an accessory dwelling unit and construct a new single-family dwelling that's conforming to the setbacks, sort of more in the center of the flag portion of the lot, more than 40 feet from all sides, the front, the two sides and the rear. And then build a new driveway that serves just this parcel, and leave a portion here. Right now, I forgot to mention, the existing driveway serves 93 Witch Lane. They have a right of way just for access to reach their garage. So to separate those and just have a driveway here, new house and existing house to remain. I have a planting plan. It's not shown on here. I could pull that up, but a part of the regulations for ADUs is to screen it. It's pretty private right now. There's a existing 6-foot fence on this side, and there's some plantings here, but I have proposed some screening plantings along the back here to just sort of make this a little bit more obscured from the neighbors. That's the general overview. I have had discussions with DPW about stormwater and the sanitary sewer lateral. I have not submitted to them yet, but I've talked to them about this plan, and they seem to be generally on board. That being said, they haven't officially reviewed it yet.
Mr. Conti, what is the size of the existing structure?
The existing structure, are you talking like square footage or height?
Yeah.
Or
Square footage?
I have a sketch of that. If you just bear with me for a second, I can pull it up. That shows. So this is sort of a schematic of the existing area that would get converted to the ADU. The total square footage is just under 700, 682. I just basically multiplied these dimensions to get the area here.
Sure.
That's my basic overview. I'm not sure if there's happy to answer any more questions. I don't know if there's anything else I should be touching on.
This is the first ADU request we're dealing with under the new regulation, so we may stumble a little bit. Forgive us. Steve or Brian, does the fact that the original structure in what will now be the ADU is legally non-conforming play any role at all in the discussion of this?
No, it actually, I think at the end of the day, ends up making it more conforming than it was. So it actually helps us out a little bit.
Okay. Any other questions from commissioners?
Yes, I have a question. And in light of Brian's response to you, I'll direct the question to Brian to start with. My understanding of the regulation is that if the structure that is going to be made into an ADU is legally non-conforming, then it is okay to convert it into an ADU. But as I read the zoning notes on this map, this entire lot is legally non-conforming. And I just wonder, building a second house on a non-conforming lot, doesn't that constitute an intensification of a non-conforming use, which would then require the ZBA's intervention before we get it?
No, because we removed the minimum lot size requirements. So essentially, if you have a lot that exists, that's an approved building lot, we've pretty much given you the okay that you could put an ADU on a lot.
So there is no lot size then anymore?
Right, so previous, the old ADU regs, they used to say that you had to meet all your minimum requirements, including frontage, minimum lot size, all those kind of things. With the revision to the reg, we pulled that out. Kind of with the idea that if you have a lot that has a house on it, you know, an ADU at that point is just accessory to that, so the lot size, frontage, all that doesn't really apply.
But this is building a new house and making the existing house an ADU. I mean, I don't want to beat this to death. I just, you know, reading the notes on this map, the lot size is non-conforming. And we're putting a new house substantially larger than what was there and making the old house an ADU. I have to hand it to the applicant. This is our first one, as Mr. Chairman said. It's creative. So if there's no problem with the lot size, then I guess it works.
Brian, this question's for you. Has the new structure been approved? Like, I'm grappling with, you know, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? I think it is a creative use. And I'm just curious, is this, as this map is shown here, is the house, the new house in the right location and acceptable?
As far as I know, the house itself, the proposed house hasn't gone through the permitting process yet. So essentially, this is, you know, your approval to convert it to the ADU is contingent, I mean, on that being approved for it to become an ADU. But how we wrote the reg is you no longer need to, you know, you can build both at the same time or convert existing structure to ADU and build the new house. So it doesn't really affect our process. Just essentially once Mr. Conti builds a single family house or submits plans and gets that approved, then this would become the ADU.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just curious, how are they going to get to the ADU? Because the driveway only goes to the new house. So if somebody's living in the ADU, how do they drive to it?
I can answer that. There's no driveway right to the structure. That's true. There is parking in this area, and there's 2 parking spaces in the garage that serve the single family residence. So there's parking in this area, and then my idea was that you walk just a little bit to the structure.
Okay, so there'd be like a sidewalk for them.
Sure.
Okay,
Yes.
I understand.
Question, do you have a drawing of this proposed structure?
Yes, I don't know if it was submitted as a part of the application, but I'm happy to share with you do you want to see like an elevation?
Yes, whatever you have available, so I have an idea of what's going up.
Sure.
Just the photo, John, is probably good.
Oh, you mean the existing structure or the proposed structure?
The proposed.
Let me see if I can get the front of it. This is a front elevation. And this is the east elevation. This is the north elevation. So this would be the side facing the left side of the page on the site plan I was showing. And this is
This is the ADU?
no.
Okay, I want to see the ADU.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's the existing structure.
Yeah.
If you have, let's see, I submitted just one photo. Bear with me while I pull that up.
Are there significant changes to the structure of the house that is becoming the ADU, or is it just designating it as such while you
This
build
is
the new
this is the
house?
existing structure. This is this is the south facing side. No, there's not extensive changes that are needed. No. This is basically my house right now.
We're just seeing the floor plan right now.
I'm sorry, say again, you'd like to see the floor plan?
No, you're presenting the floor plan. I don't know if you have the picture on the other screen or something.
Oh.
Yeah,
I'm
I'll pull that up.
sorry. Yeah, right. Let me reshare that. Yes, thank you for that. This is the existing structure. Can you see this now?
Yeah,
Before this regulation came out, my intention is to sort of, I didn't present it because it wasn't part of the application, but my intention is to sort of spruce this place up. I didn't know if, this building had to be raised at some point, so I was hesitant to sort of like invest dollars in modifying it, but pending the approval of this application, that's sort of my intention, is to sort of make it a little prettier.
it
Steve,
looks very nice right now, actually.
Oh, thank you.
Steve, in the future, I think it would make sense for us to hear a I have no problem with this request. However, I think that this should, a presentation like this should come to us after the primary residence has been approved. Because we're asking a lot of questions which would not have to be asked if that were the case. So just a suggestion that in the future, that's the way we handle this. But I'm perfectly comfortable moving forward on this one. Are there any other questions?
Yes.
Please.
Probably for Steve or Brian. Is Mr. Conti able to live in the ADU while he builds his other house? Because I've heard in the past, if somebody wanted to build a new house and they were living on the property, they had to tear the existing house down, even if it wasn't on the same footprint. And that might be old information, but I just want to make sure that the applicant can stay there, that he doesn't have to go, somewhere else while he's trying to build his other house.
That'd be
Yeah,
great.
so this will pretty much act as, this is a single family house until Mr. Conti, builds the new house, then it becomes designated as the ADU. So
Okay,
he's
and
able to
then-
live.
And then at that point, the permit for the ADU would be filed once his new house is complete?
Right, so once he builds or gets a permit to build the new house, that's when he can also get his zoning permit to call this an ADU.
Okay, so like a CO would be delivered to both properties at the same time, both dwellings, structures, at the same time.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Brian, quick question. In terms of like numbering of, let's say the lot is 91, would the ADU be like 91A or B, something like that?
That's a good question. I'm not sure how I think the post office or DPW is the one who actually issues your official address. So I'm not sure how they're going to start designating these. I would assume it'd be like unit 1 or unit 2 on the same address.
Thank you.
All right, anything else before we act on this? All right, if not, can I have a motion to approve? This is basically a site plan review. Galen? Is that-
I'll move to approve.
Okay, Galen moves to approve, Hector seconds. Let's do a roll call on this.
Sure, let's see. Okay, so this is a motion to approve the application. Ms. Jordan Byron,
Approved, yes.
Mr. Rowena. You're muted, Mr. Rowena.
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Ms. Wells,
Yes,
Mr. Cantor,
Yes, excited to see the first one.
Mr. Patches.
Yes.
Ms. Langalis,
Yes,
and Mr. Schulman.
Yes, I think you forgot.
Oh, and I missed Mr. Bashnik. It's all the way over to the left, Mr. Bashnik.
Yes.
There we
It's
go.
unanimous.
Great. Thank you all so much for your time and approval. Much appreciated.
Have a good evening.
Same to you.
Next item, item C, 2022-53 Norwalk Hospital Association, 34 Maple Street, District 1, Block 6, Lot 1, modification to Norwalk Hospital sign manual. Report and recommend action. Ms. Deal?
Good evening.
Evening.
Would you like me to present the package?
Yes, if you would, please.
Certainly. The package that we presented to you before has had some minor modifications at the recommendation of the council or the commission, I'm sorry. The signage that was approved, EO1 was approved, so I'll skip past that. The signage that was in question was mostly the directional signage with a request to make the text bigger, and there were some particular signs that everyone wanted to see the letters a little bit bigger. So they made the word emergency a little bit bigger on these signs. In our communication, we had asked how big the signs could be. We had asked the city how big the signs could be, and we had no response to that question. And so our client does not wish to go for a variance. They don't wish to change out the signs to make them bigger overall. And so working with the space that is there, they're very limited to what they can do. A letter was provided to staff in advance of this meeting. And in that letter, there was a hyperlink to the United States Sign Council Foundation's research studies on sign legibility and how we come to the conclusion that negative space around letters is equally as important as the letters themselves. And so increasing the size of the sign, it would require us to increasing the size of the letters would require us to increase the size of the sign, which would then most likely lead us to a variance situation and also a costly situation. So Nuvance has opted not to go down that road, and they're hoping that they can receive your approval tonight without having to go down that road. So the word emergency was originally 3 inches, and it went up to 3 3/8 inches. So that adds almost another 1/2 of an inch in height. They can't stretch the letters out because, again, that obstructs the negative space, and the negative space around the letters is equally as important as the space that the letters occupies. And so they did that on all of the signs that had the word emergency on them. They increased the size of the word emergency to make it bigger and more recognizable. And they also added some more birthing center language to some of the signs for direction for patients that are trying to find the birthing center. And ultimately, the other signs did not change at all. And the door vinyls did not change at all. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Can you go back? Okay, this one would be fine. My question relates to the size of these letters compared to the current letters. Are they larger than what it currently exists?
I believe that the whole sign is the same size. The existing sign is the same size as the proposed sign, but the way that the panel is occupied by the font and the size of the letters, they are either the same size or bigger than what is currently there.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So,
Change.
Ms. Deal, is on the slide that you have up on the screen, is the sort of the after with the enlarged font, the left, and the existing, the right?
No, the left image is one side of the sign and the right image is the other side of the sign. This is a whole new drawing. The previous drawing is what we submitted before. And that previous drawing showed the word emergency at 3 inches and now it's 3 3/8 inches.
Is it possible in your presentation for you to show us the difference between sort of the before and the after so that we can make a judgment based on what we can see?
I can certainly try. If you can give me one moment, I will look for the drawing.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Tracy, it's Mike Zolnick. The existing conditions are shown there in the photos to the left on the bottom, and the proposed new ones are on the right. Is that what's being asked?
They're looking for the previous submittal and the
Okay.
current submittal.
Okay.
So the previous submittal was this version. And this is the previous submittal. And then I have to do some finagling here with my screen.
Okay.
Just bear with me. I want to make sure I'm showing you the same page. So this is EO8 and this is EO8. So this is, no, that's 7. This is 8. So it's really hard to show you. I can show you 100% this one, and I can show you 100% this one. And it's obviously not going to be something that you can see on a piece of paper.
They look the same, pretty much.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You
I-
will be
I-
able
I
to
could
see
see-
it
I
on a
could see the
drawing. You won't be able to
difference.
see it until it's installed.
Yeah, but
Right.
I could see the difference. Yeah.
The one on the right is the new one.
Yes.
Okay, yeah,
The
so
one-
it is
The one
bigger.
on the right actually is the old one. The one on the left is the new one.
Oh, the
Now,
one on the left looks smaller.
Smaller.
Yeah, and it could
Yeah.
just be the distortion of the screen because as you move it, it changes the depiction of the illustration. So it's a really hard thing to see a difference in size signs on a piece of paper.
And we talked about last time the geographical challenges. Did you or the firm actually go and drive up the hill that Norwalk Hospital sits on?
I believe I heard Michael was here.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I've driven up that a number of times. Tracy, E10 is, we're actually adding an additional sign. That's part of this package. As you drive up the road, which will be added, one additional sign for helping people get to the emergency and the ambulances get into their areas as well.
Like, does it make
as-
sense to have less information on one of those signs so that it can be bigger? Like the emergency and the main entrance are probably the most important things because if you're going to Norwalk Hospital, do you know if you're going to the McGraw Center? I'm just saying, I think they're still too small. And I think this is the only opportunity that we're going to have to change these fonts. And so I'm just throwing out another idea.
Can I
Also,
say something? So the change with the colors is definitely significant and helpful. As somebody who's actually been lost getting to the birthing center in labor within the last year, if there is any way, I don't know if it's within the scope of these changes to bring that to that sign that shows emergency main entrance that you showed before, or to, I assume there's a reason you're not using the words labor and delivery, but might be a big help. But really the other emergency that happens is people that are in labor looking for the birthing center. It may be with outside of the scope, but I just wanted to give that feedback.
The sign that said birthing center, is that the proposed one?
This right here, E12 says birthing
Yeah,
center.
Yeah, family birthing center. Is that the new one?
That is the new sign. This is the newly proposed language for the sign.
How you like that, Anna?
So I'm having a hard time keeping track of, is this a change to one sign or multiple signs? And which is the old and which is the new? I'm finding this a confusing
The
presentation.
change was actually to multiple signs, anywhere
Yeah.
the word emergency appeared.
Make
And
it bigger.
then the birthing center language was added to that signage. And that particular sign is E12. And so that sign is down here.
Yeah, so this is the problem. As you're driving up, if you miss that turn, E12, and most people, or rather, I shouldn't say that, I should say me, people who've been to the hospital before for emergencies and main entrances have never thought to turn left. So you're looking at the signs that are at, I don't know, E11 or E9, and there's nothing there about birthing center or labor and delivery. If there's a reason why it wouldn't make sense for it to be there or it can't be there, I don't want to push something from one person's experience. But it was very stressful and almost gave birth in the parking lot due to being lost trying to find the labor and delivery unit. In Norwalk
Michael, do
Hospital.
you think that that's something that the hospital would be agreeable to doing and to adding the birthing center to sign E9? It looks like there's definitely room on the face of it.
Yeah, definitely. If there's space on that.
There's
sign.
definitely room on the face of it, and E9 is that sign that's up here, right at the entrance area that Miss Anna was just speaking about.
Like
So
if
the
you
hospital
missed
would
it,
be
you
agreeable
missed
to
it.
that. Michael speaks for the hospital.
Can you
Oh my
go
God,
to
thank
E12 real
you.
quick?
I'm sorry?
Go to E12 real quick.
Yes.
Actually go to E9, I'm sorry. Okay,
E9?
yeah. Okay. Yeah, if we need to add the family birthing center to any of these signs, that'll help as you go up that hill. We definitely will. We can do that.
So
I
I
have a
appreciate
quick
the
question.
consideration.
Go ahead, Richard.
I just wonder, given the fact that it says Nuvance Health and Norwalk Hospital everywhere, all over the building, is it necessary for a third of the sign to say Nuvance Health and Norwalk Hospital for the emergency room entrance?
Good point.
I
I would
think,
have to,
I think the
my
signs are,
answer, Mr. Rowena, my answer would be that that's somewhat above my pay grade. I don't make the decisions about how the signs themselves are
that was a
designed.
that's why we're asking you. I
Yeah,
mean,
that was a leadership decision as part of the rebranding for all of our hospitals. So as you get closer into a campus, you'll see that the ones farthest on the perimeters are going to have not only the master brand, but also the hospital name. And then as you get closer into the campus, which is a little bit different for this one as compared to like our Vassar one in Poughkeepsie, New York, and Danbury, you drop the hospital name because you already know you're at the hospital. And then as you get even farther in, it drops both. So that's
Yeah.
the reasoning. That's the reasoning behind the progression of these signs and the master brand, and then also the hospital names on it.
Thank you, Michael.
Yep.
So what Mr. Zolnick is saying, that the text of the word Nuvance Health, it appears to be like it's a huge portion of the sign, but the size of those letters actually changes based on the position of the sign on the campus. So
I'm
the
only
signs-
looking at the one that you presented as the new sign. And it would appear that Nuvance Health Norwalk Hospital takes up a third of the sign.
And that's because that
and
is
have-
the sign
I
that's
have
further
not had-
away.
I have not gone there to have a baby, but I
Yeah.
have accompanied women that have had babies. And I've also gone there because I thought I was having a heart attack, and it turned out I was. And I think the signs are terrible. And I don't know that it would be necessary for me to reaffirm that I was at Norwalk Hospital when I was on Stevens Street or Maple Street. And I'm not trying to be a smart guy about it. I think it's really important that these, so especially given the size of Norwalk Hospital now, it's difficult to find anything unless you go there every day.
So could we go back to your comment, Ms. Deal, that the city did not respond to your request for information either on the width of the signs. And I don't know that anybody on this commission knows a lot about sign requirements, but if it's a commercial enterprise, you know, there's usually a fairly big sign. You are tasked with putting a lot of information on a rather small looking placard. But, you know, people going to the hospital usually are not in, you know, they're not going there because they're happy. And so I think it's really incumbent to make it as easy to find where they're going as possible, you know. So maybe we have to ask the city, can they widen these signs to make the font larger, more horizontal, stretched out, whatever term you want to use, so that people can read that while they're in a car going up a hill. It could be night, it could be pouring, it could be snowing, and they're stressed. And, you know, I know Nuvance has standards that they want to meet, but I think the main standard should be that the people going to the hospital get to where they're going in a timely manner. Not with
understand.
style.
I understand your concerns. It wouldn't just be stretching the sign out in width, though. The sign would have to be made bigger in height and width. The whole sign would have to be made bigger. All of the signs would have to be made bigger. And then that changes the footprint of the sign, the location of the sign, the overall size of the sign. That changes everything about the signs, and takes everybody back to square one. And this is a proposal to try to change the appearance of existing signs without doing that, without changing the sign entirely. If we begin to raise the fonts any bigger than they currently are, we have to change the signs, and that creates a hardship for the applicant, because then the applicant is being forced to financially come up with funds to create a bigger sign, when the existing, this is already compatible with what's existing in the existing signs that are already in place, and they're trying to rebrand the hospital to include the Nuvance name and bring it up to the Nuvance standards. And so it's not just making the sign wider. They would have to make the sign wider and taller, because they can't just change the branding and the font and the image of Nuvance for one location in that way. The whole letter would have to be bigger. Everything would have to be bigger.
Well, I understand that, but I think what you're hearing from those people who use the hospital, that what currently exists isn't working well. And it would seem to me it's in both the hospital's interest and in the public interest to have this signage work for those people who need it. Even if that means that the signs need to be somewhat larger. With all due respect, within the scope of a project this size, I hardly think that that's going to be a significant financial hardship for the hospital. Nobody's asking you to make Nuvance smaller or Norwalk Hospital smaller. They just want the wording under that to be larger and more visible.
I understand.
Yeah, Tracy, there's a couple things just I want to point out. For the Nuvance and Norwalk Hospital, the footprint of that on the top of the sign is almost identical to what's existing for Norwalk Hospital on the old legacy signs, on the existing pictures down there. It's just
That's what hasn't been working.
That's exactly the point.
And also by changing the background to blue and white also makes it more visible as well, instead of having black lettering on silver. Just want to put that out there. If we are to change this height and width of the signs, the costs with the amount of these signs, it is going to be significant, because they're going to have to not only fabricate an entirely new sign, but they're also going to have to dig new footings, pour new concrete for all of them, reinforcements. So it adds up significantly to the budget of this location as well.
Without making the sign bigger, could New Vance Health and Norwalk Hospital be closer? Could the white portion be taking up less of the space overall? That makes sense?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure who the gentleman is speaking. I can't adjust your name.
That's Mr. Zolnick.
Yeah, Mr. Zoll, Mike Zolnick with New Vance.
Okay, hi, Mike. Sorry, I didn't quite catch your last name, but in the photographs of the signs that are in the slide, the white background with the blue lettering that says Norwalk Hospital is quite visible from my computer screen that I'm sitting here looking. And the blue background with the white lettering from a distance is much less legible to me. I don't know if everybody else has that same experience. And yes, people definitely need to know that it's the Norwalk Hospital, and okay, it's nice you guys own it, you have a New Vance Health on there. But the other directionals are, I think they're very small, you know, and the emergency room obviously is the most important place people need to get to, but it's just too small. So if it's always been too small and you can't really increase the font except for 3/8 of an inch, which really, if you're driving, I don't think makes that much difference. I'm not, you know, going to argue with that government report about sort of the visibility factor, but it would just seem they need to be bigger. The bottom line, whatever technical term you want to use.
I also agree about the color background as well. The white, the blue letters on white is much more visible than the white letters on blue.
And probably even more so at night in the dark when you're shining your headlights on something.
I concur as well.
And are you working at all in conjunction with the renovation that's going to be taking place at Norwalk Hospital in the not too distant future?
Yeah, I'm transitioning over to that in the next couple of months, but this project is, we're trying to finish up this project before I move on to that next one. So this is separate from the bed tower reno project.
Well, when that project is complete, will there need to be signage for that new portion of the hospital? Maybe not. Maybe it's not going to have its own name.
Yeah, it's going to be, since it's attached to the, you know, the main tower there.
Okay, it's just patient rooms. Okay.
There might be some, you know, I don't know if they're going to do letter sets on the building, but I don't believe the traffic directionals are going to be altered or changed.
Thank you.
Well, we've had a fair amount of discussion on this. What's your pleasure?
I vote that they look at this again and come back with something better like we asked them to do. I see these changes from last time as insignificant.
I agree with Richard. And if the city, if the applicant asked the city for some information and the city did not get back, then I would request that the city please get back to them. But I really think that I wouldn't pass it as it's proposed. I don't think it doesn't meet the goal of what we're tasked to do.
Can I get feedback? Go ahead, Hector.
No, I concur with Richard and Tammy. Like, we are working on the public interest right now, and I don't think the public will be served as they should.
Okay. JJ?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the general consensus that, you know, we'd like to see some of these requests come to light. And I also like to know, like, why didn't they reach out to you? If you reached out to a city department and they did not return your call or put it in writing as to, you know, why your request is being denied or accepted, then that needs to be followed up on for sure.
Yeah, I find that a little difficult to believe myself, but I will follow up tomorrow.
Galen?
sorry. Do you have to say family birthing center? Because the first word is, that's wordy. If you say birthing center, which is apparently the new lingo for labor and delivery, that's much more direct. That's just my opinion. The more words there, the more difficult it is to focus your attention on what you need to focus your attention on.
Okay, thank you, Galen. Nick,
I don't think I have anything to add.
okay. And Anna,
I would just ask that if this comes back, to sort of have it very clear, this is the current, this is the original, this is our proposed, or this is what it's like with blue and white, and this is what it's like with white and blue, to make it a little easier to follow. I would appreciate removing family from family birthing center, or even changing back to labor and delivery. But I appreciate your openness to changes, but I think it can be made better.
thanks, Anna. And Darius?
Yes, I support the wording labor and delivery, as well as Richard and Tammy's point around the color of the sign. I definitely think that the more colors you add, the more it takes away from people's ability to see it, especially as they're driving.
Okay. Steve, do we need to take formal action on this? I'd rather they withdraw it rather than us denying it.
No, I don't think you have to do anything more than what you've done. I'm assuming the hospitals, at least they haven't indicated they're not willing to keep working with the city, as far as I can tell.
Good. Then we'll look forward to seeing you, if not our next meeting, then a meeting fairly soon. And hopefully resolve this. Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay, we have two public hearings. And I want to say a few things about them. The first is going to be on the capital budget. Last year, our role in the capital budgeting process changed significantly. We no longer had a regular role in recommending each and every project, number one, or assisting in really in setting dollar amounts. Our role became to review the capital projects in the capital budget. And as you know, there are literally hundreds of them. In light of whether they support the recommendations of the POCD, the Plan of Conservation and Development. And so as we go into this public hearing, those are the comments we're looking to hear about from the public. Not do you support this project, or it's a necessary project, or even that it's an important project. The comments really need to be related only to, does the project support the goals of the POCD? And I know it's going to be challenging for members of the public, as it's going to be challenging for us to analyze all of these projects on that basis. But that is what we're tasked to do. So with that, let me explain how the process works. I think Steve will probably give a very brief introduction. And commission members certainly are welcome to ask of him or of the members of the committee, which was composed of Tammy as a chair, myself as a member, JJ as a member, and Darius as a member. So Steve will give a brief presentation. We can ask any questions we like. Then we'll open it up to the public and see what the public has to say about the relationship between the POCD and the projects. We ask that you be brief, and frankly, given the limited scope that we had, there really isn't a lot to say. People may have some difficulty with this. If you get off topic, I'm going to ask that we cut you off. We ask that you extend a courtesy to both the members of the commission and to the members of the public who are listening in making your comments. You get you'll have one opportunity to speak. If you have more than one project you want to speak about, that's certainly acceptable. When that portion of the meeting is over and everyone who wishes to speak has had an opportunity, Steve may make some quick final comments, but we will then close the hearing. And with that, Steve, I'll turn it over to you for some brief comments, and then we'll open it up to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will be very brief because I don't want to be repetitive at what the chairman said. Just a little bit of background. In years past, when there was a separate planning commission and a separate zoning commission, the planning commission used to prepare an actual capital budget based on the request received by the various city departments and agencies. With the combination of the planning commission and the zoning commission, that process was altered so that the combined commission's role was really to look at the request as they came in. So there are a series of meetings that the subcommittee has with the various departments, and they outline those requests. And as the chairman indicated, it's really looking for the commission to make a finding that the requests are consistent with the recommendations within the POCD. And that, you know, that can be very broad in terms of what those uses are. So the key thing for the public's information is that we're not looking at the financial aspect of any of these applications. We're not judging whether it costs too much or they should be funded more for this. We're just looking at the actual request, and is this consistent with the goals and recommendations as outlined in the POCD? There's a separate process occurs with BET as well as the council in terms of looking at the actual numbers involved, as well as with the mayor's office, but that's separate and apart from what this commission's role is.
Okay, Brian, would you explain how the public can access the meeting?
Sure. So for anyone from the public, if you'd like to speak, you can use the raise your hand tool. It's at the bottom of your screen. It's under everybody's faces. If you're dialed in on a phone, you'd hit *9 and that will raise your hand and I can bring you over to speak. All right. Yeah, Ms. Lauricello.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you, Chairman, and I appreciate your words and your explanation. I am one that doesn't think that the role should have changed, but it is what it is. So tonight I live at 21 Little Fox Lane. Tonight I'd just like to outline a few things in the time I have. First of all, I very much appreciate the subcommittee. I was able to listen in on some of the discussion, and many of you asked really good questions of our fine staff who prepared their budget. I just wanted to focus on, unfortunately, please be patient with the public. I have in front of me a POCD, but I did not, as I normally do, put an exact page of the POCD to reference. And in the future, should I still be around, I will do so. I'm just going to have to lump it into the different parts for now, but I think they're germane. And that has to do with my main concern in around page 115, part 3, environment, sustainability, and resilience. So there are several requests. The first is the Recreation and Parks Department. I believe that they had requested more money related to the Broad River Baseball Complex, although I know that there was money found by the state senator, the legislature. I request that this fine body requests that there will be no more artificial turf projects unless and until-
Miss Lauricella, that's off topic.
I don't think so, because it's part of section 3, part 3, environment, sustainability, and resilience, and artificial turf is not. So, and that is a request, a capital request in the to enhance the Broad River Baseball Complex, which I do think needs to be enhanced. It's just the material they're using has been known to not only off gas to the players, it has polluted runoff and also heat and thermal issues. May I continue?
Go ahead.
Also PFAS, just trying to help the commission sort this out. Secondly, in light of part 3, once again, environment, that section, sustainability, etc. I believe that the request by the Board of Education, I know you spent a lot of time on each of the construction projects, and I did review the memo that was placed for the next item on the agenda. I won't address that, except to say that it was very informative. Whether I read that memo or not, I do believe that this body, the now combined planning and zoning, needs to, that the requests for the Norwalk High School, the South Norwalk School project are not meeting the intent of enough, optimized enough, the intent and plans of that part 3. I was on the committee. We talked over the need to optimize the use of renewable energy, and many projects cited in the memo, just as a reference that is available to the public that I glanced at quickly, give a series of a list of sites where it just didn't fit or it didn't pencil out. And that has been a long time problem. Capital budgets are 5-year budgets as they rotate. And the thing is, there has been an ongoing debate about the policy, and it's a faulty policy. And I hope that this body, as you are rewriting your regs, also for this request, that you reject until they come back to the drawing board, optimizing optimizing infrastructure, which is capital budget. So they can embrace true green infrastructure. They can embrace true use of renewables. Right now, electricity is in the operating budget. So the PPA probably is in the operating budget, which is the
Ms. Lauricella, you need to speak directly to individual, number one, to individual items. Number two, I'm going to ask because, and don't take this the wrong way, but you are rather long-winded. We don't need the narrative. We need, if you want to speak to an item, let us know briefly if you support the item or don't support the item. We don't need to know exactly what your role was. That's just burning up valuable time and taking time away from everybody else.
Chairman Schulman, I find what you just said to me quite offensive and quite typical of, as a female, I find it offensive and typical. All I will say is I am just about done. I thank you for all the hard work you all have had. I lastly wanted to just say, I ask for the library requests, and I'm very pleased, many of them. I very much agree with Chair Schulman, who you literally asked about maintenance of electric hybrid vehicles, and I do think it should be centralized. So I ask that you add that to your, you approve the library request, but add that this city centralize electric EV maintenance or hiring people that can help the city with the new role of EV maintenance. And I have a question. What is missing on the request is the expansion of the library. I just want to make a note of it on the record that by this point, we have one more year left. There should have been a capital budget request about the library expansion and renovation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Mandy Singh.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Mandy Singh. I live at 73 North Sear Hill Road in Norwalk. I have 3 kids in Norwalk Public Schools, and I'm the PTO president at Cranberry Elementary School. Again, I'm trying to respect, the guidelines you gave. I unfortunately don't know a lot about the process, but I do have access to the items that the Board of Ed requested in the capital budget. And I just want to advocate in favor of all of them. There's the band instrument replacement request, enhancement to security request, instructional technology request, Brookside Montessori program request, curriculum materials and textbooks request, air conditioning program request, capital repairs and replacement request, school paving ADA compliance, fuel tank replacement, heating system replacement, school projects, Board of Ed asbestos abatement program, and the Brian McMahon High School cooling plant upgrade. From the information I have, those all seem like important requests that we need to fund. So I'd urge you to consider them seriously within, your scope and your role. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Singh. I appreciate your passion. Unfortunately, your comments are sort of off topic in terms of what our role is. Nonetheless, again, I do appreciate your feelings about the Norwalk school system. Thank you.
Next is Amanda Trimboli.
Hello, my name is Amanda Trimboli. I live at 12 Cider Lane. I am a Norwalk resident, obviously, with some kids in Norwalk Public Schools, specifically at Wolf Pit Elementary School. I am also the Wolf Pit PTA president. And I just started a substitute job, which I am enjoying. So I'm in the school a lot more. I also wanted to speak on the BOE capital budget request. Not really sure how me talking about this would be off topic because it is part of this, but I just want to express my concerns for the asbestos abatement because Wolf Pit is listed as a school for that. How can we get this as a priority? I think that we all know that asbestos is horrible. The exposure to asbestos can be toxic and life-threatening, and we have young kids in the building. And specifically, I was substitute teaching in the pre-K class with 3- and 4-year-olds last week. And I noticed the custodian had to come down and he patched up a piece of cracked tile. And we all know that most of the tile floors in Norwalk schools are completely filled with asbestos. So I'm wondering how this is not a full priority right now. And the BOE asked for a certain amount of money. The city is only giving them maybe a quarter of that. So I just want to know how we can make this a priority because we have children in the building at all times and teachers with this asbestos exposure. And those are my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trimboli. Again, your comments really don't relate to what our role is. They would be more importantly, I think, heard by the Board of Estimate and Taxation, Board of Education, and the other bodies that actually have responsibility for setting the budget. We don't really have a role in setting the budget. Our role, again, is merely to determine whether the items in the budget meet the recommendations of the Plan of Conservation and Development. But thank you for your comments.
Next is Eric Niederer.
Thank you. Eric Niederer, 36 Pettum Road. So, Chairman Chulman, as you indicated what your role is, and I think we appreciate that clarification for people that are new to this type of hearing. Certainly, aspects like whether it's the asbestos abatement, and again, I'm speaking on behalf of the BOE capital budget ask, certainly fulfills that requirement. I can speak as to security. You know, obviously we're in a different age than when I went to school, probably when you went to school. It certainly makes sense that we have various upgrades, and I know this body is not charged with the budgetary aspect, but certainly with regards to whether or not this fits within the gambit of the recommendations. You know, the same with air conditioning, various upgrades. I understand that the city has agreed on the fuel tank replacement. Clearly, that's a line item that's consistent, and the various school projects. So I think if you review the line items 1 through 13 that have been presented, they certainly run within favor of the auspices of what the intent is. I would just ask that this body, within its power and its authority, fulfill the obligations of the BOE capital budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next it's A. Milik.
Hi, yes, thank you for giving us the time to be able to express our concerns and give our thoughts. It's new for me, so I appreciate your patience, and I appreciate you giving some clarification, and appreciate all the work that you guys do on our behalf. I'm a parent in Norwalk. I live on 209 Scribner Ave.
Excuse me, Mr. Milik.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Can you just give us your address, please?
Yeah, 209 Scribner Avenue,
Thank you.
Norwalk, Connecticut. Yeah, thank you. I'm a concerned parent with 2 children in Fox Run. I have a third that's going to be going in next year, my daughter. And looking at the BOE capital budget request, it was kind of shocking to see the big reduction. Now, I know you clarified that that's not something that this committee is in charge of, but I did appreciate the opportunity just to kind of express as a parent what we see firsthand, the impact that well-staffed interventions have been making towards providing each and every student with the opportunity for resources that are needed to flourish. I think that's in line with what the community is trying to do here. The interventions have enabled considerable improvements, not only test scores, but the work ethic, the community, sense of community within the schools. I know my wife and I have seen our sons grow, improve the past 2 years, especially with the the pandemic that kind of derailed some things. They're flourishing. They've built more self-confidence in their reading and their math skills. And I know that many other parents are expressing the same sentiments. Our staff here in the schools are continuing to work above and beyond to try to really bridge the gap of this post pandemic that hit us out of the blue. And they do deserve a reasonable number of colleagues around them to help shoulder that responsibility. And that's really where this budget is going to come into play. They deserve to know that the city of Norwalk values the basic needs for the staff and the students to work and learn in a comfortable, safe conditions, and to be able to focus on that learning. These aren't really wish list items I see in these 13 items. They really are let's say almost rights for our children to be able to have and that they deserve. So we love this community. We want to see our children thrive and grow, and we try to give them every educational advantage that we can. I personally feel that it's their right, and it's my responsibility, our responsibility, to provide that. So we're invested in that mission, and we hope the city of Norwalk invests in our children, provides the funding that those on the front lines are asking for as well.
Thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Laird.
Hello, Dana Laird, 214 Highland Avenue. Speaking on behalf of the Historical Commission, I am the chair. I don't know if this is just redundant for me to reiterate. I hope you consider our 6 funding requests, because our preserving of the past is important for our future. You probably don't need me to go through those actual numbers anymore, do you? Or just
I don't believe so.
right. I just wanted to say that yes, we would hope that this is considered important. All these, the mansion, the Smith Street, etc., museum, etc., and cemetery murals. Okay, that's it then.
Thank you.
Next, we have Sadie and Eileen CR.
Hi, this is Sadie Martinez. I think I didn't put right my name on the box there. My address is 59 Benedict Street, and I have a boy that goes to Fox Run Elementary School. He's in 5th grade. And I'm here. This is my first time doing something like this, so please bear with me. I'm here on behalf of the BOC capital budget request, and I think that the city CFO recommendation does not meet the BOE requests for all 13 requests that they have provided. I think all these 13 requests are important, especially the enhancements to security, and just like the other 13, but especially the enhancements to security, because due to the times that we're living, I think that cutting any funding for any of these 13 requests will be very detrimental to our children, the staff, and just our education system here in Norwalk. So I hope that this is reconsidered, taking into consideration again, and you know, this is changed, and that they don't make any cuts for the budget. And that's it.
Thank you. I'm going to reiterate again. I appreciate the passion of so many of these speakers speaking up for funding for the Board of Education. But once again, it's not our role to recommend what gets funded, what doesn't get funded, beyond how that relates to the again, plan of conservation and development. And I'd like to ask any future speakers, please keep that in mind.
Lou, if people have those thoughts or feedback, is that should be directed to council, common council, or where should that go?
I would express it to the Board of Estimate and Taxation first of all. I think it's always worthwhile to let the mayor know how you feel about specific budget items. And to your individual council men and women. And you know, our role is a difficult one, so I understand why everybody's having such a difficult time with it. Yeah, it's nice to hear how people feel about our education system, but it's not our role to rule on that. Darius, something you wanted to say?
Should I read what the POCD is from the city website?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to suggest, that the average person out there probably does not have a copy. It's 380 some pages long, and maybe we can send out the link. And if they can scroll through it and find the page, paragraph, chapter that supports what they're saying, that might be helpful to the public.
Darius, what is it you were going to read?
So it was just the one sentence, POCD, Plan of Conservation and Development, known in Norwalk as our citywide plan. The POCD is a 10-year state mandated planning document meant to guide the growth and development of our city. So that's just what it says on the city's website.
Thank you,
So
Darius.
it also identifies strategies to protect important resources and attributes of Norwalk.
Can the staff just say what the link is on the city website so people can find it?
I'm not sure what you mean with say what the link is. I mean, I don't think I could actually say what the link is.
Well, it's in
In the
there
search
somewhere,
bar,
right? The document is in there.
In the search bar, someone can just type in POCD and it should pop up on the city.
Well, sometimes it's tricky finding exactly what you're looking for on the city website.
It
But
is.
if you can,
Oh, yeah.
great. I can try to do it myself right at the moment. But I think
Right, in the meantime, let's go back to the speakers. And
Okay.
Tammy, when you have that information, why don't you indicate that?
I see Ms. Alterman has raised her hand. Go ahead, Ms. Alterman.
Hi, I'm so sorry. I have sick children in the background, so I apologize. If it's okay, I can read it's not that long, the blurb on the city website about what the POCD is. I don't know if that's helpful or not, instead of reading 300 pages, or there's not a way to.
I don't either, but go ahead and take a minute or two to do that.
Okay, I apologize about the background noise.
That's okay. And can you also give us your address?
Yes, I'm sorry. My name is Heidi Alterman. I serve on Common Council. I'm a representative in District D. I live at 29 Sherwood Street, Norwalk, Connecticut, 06851.
Thank you.
And I'm an in-district representative. Okay, by 2029, the city of Norwalk has become a national example of a small city that boasts a thriving and dynamic economy. I'm gonna shut my door. I apologize. Okay. A thriving and dynamic economy, varied housing choices for all income levels, many safe and convenient ways to get around the city, including walking and biking, connected, accessible, and beautiful open spaces, a commitment to lifelong learning, and an active and resilient coastline. Norwalk is a center of art, culture, and entertainment for our region. We combine the character of a historic New England community on the coast of Long Island Sound with a thriving city and the country's largest metropolitan area. Our prosperity is rooted in retaining the foundation of our diversified economy, including healthcare and Fortune 500 companies, while attracting businesses in emerging fields. These businesses allow many Norwalk residents to work where they live, provide living wage jobs for all skill levels, and create a strong non-residential tax base. We're a center of culture and entertainment, attracting local and regional visitors to our urban districts of Sono and Norwalk Center, our museums, aquarium, and historic sites, and our parks and natural open spaces. We're proud of our racial and ethnic diversity and continue to welcome people from around the world. Norwalk's excellent quality of life offers a choice of housing options in neighborhoods ranging from lively urban centers of varied densities and suburban style areas to quiet, tree-filled enclaves and coastal villages. We're a city of transportation choice, a connected walking and biking city, well served by public transportation, safe and convenient pedestrian and bicycle routes to city destinations, well-maintained and well-functioning local streets, and efficient regional transportation links. Norwalk's parks, natural open spaces, and waterfront attractions work as a green and blue network linked by trails and other routes and offering recreational and nature experiences to all. Norwalk protects and enhances the natural environment and land, water, and air resources for the benefit of future generations. I'm almost done. Norwalk Harbor remains a major center of water-based activities on Long Island Sound, providing opportunities for recreation and commerce, public access for recreation and education, recreational boating, commercial shellfishing, and other vital economic, environmental, and cultural values and opportunities. Norwalk embraces lifelong learning through public-private partnerships. Our schools and Norwalk Community College promote educational achievement to create a highly qualified workforce for 21st century jobs. Norwalk seeks a strong higher education presence in its urban center to spark art, innovation, and activity. We're committed to energy and resource efficiency, as well as to pursuing solutions and adaptations to the expected impacts of climate change and sea level rise, coastal and inland flooding, extreme storms, extreme temperatures, and drought. Last paragraph. The city's infrastructure, public facilities, and public services are resource efficient, well-maintained, cost-effective, sustainable, and resilient. So that's the end of it. I apologize, I'm going to go back. The one point that I thought was a direct link to this was, how does funding of new dual language materials go against these policies? I do think that speaks directly to what your role is. So my question is, why would you vote for or against based on that criteria? Thank you.
Thank you.
Lou,
Yeah,
if I may, thank you. If the public just goes to the Norwalk website, norwalkt.org, and if you type in the search bar up at the top, just the letters POCD, it is actually the first link that pops up. So people could scroll through it. It's there. It's pretty easy to find.
thank you, Tammy.
You're welcome.
And next is Jody Prisbisky.
Yes, hi, thank you. My name is Jody Prisbisky. I live at 71 Weed Avenue, and I am a parent of 2 Norwalk Public School students. I also sit on the Brian McMahon SGC and am the PTO president, one of the PTO presidents at the Center for Global Studies. Thank you for allowing us to speak tonight and for all the work you do. I understand that you do not decide exactly where the money goes in our schools, but I do think it's important to know what is needed in the schools and why so many of us are asking that you consider these items in the BOE's capital budget request. Obviously, we want new band instruments. That's a want. We need security upgrades. Security is not a want. It is a need in the schools. It is so important for our children nowadays, getting worse and worse all the time, and taking proper security measures and having those things. Parking lot paving, it's basic. Car accidents, people falling, liabilities. It's a parking lot. It needs to be paved. New curriculum materials, and I'm really speaking mostly on behalf of Brian McMahon and CGF here, but air conditioning upgrades. These are needed. Schools close for days because of air conditioning. So again, I do appreciate that you don't pick and choose where the money goes, but you do get to help decide how much money is given, and then the Board of Ed can decide how it's spent. So I thank you for your time, and I hope you will consider funding the Board of Ed's capital budget request. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Monique Brunson.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Monique Brunson, and I'm a fairly new resident to Norwalk, living at 25 Chatham Drive. And in listening to everyone speak, I do hope that what I cover is something that is of concern to this committee. So where I live is very close to 95, and immediately when we moved here, we saw a need in the driving situation on Scribner and Cosset. There is an intersection there that really and truly needs a light. Scrivener and Cosset feeds into 95 North, and it is an incredible hazard for everyone concerned, every direction. If you go back a little bit to Chatham and also to Cosset, going back in that street, stop signs need to be installed there too. It's just an accident waiting to happen. And I just would not feel right if I didn't bring it to the attention of anyone who could do something. And I'm happy to do whatever I can as a citizen to work to get this done. I don't know that this is the board for that, but if it is not, please direct me to who is. But funding needs to be put to this. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. I would suggest you're contacting TMP, traffic, basically our traffic and parking department. They're responsible for that kind of issue.
Next, we have Ileana Zuniga.
Good evening, members of the commission. Thank you for your service. First and foremost, I live in 8 Running Brook Lake in Norwalk. I am a parent of 2 kids, one attending Norwalk High School, one attending Bragg McMahon. As many of the parents are here, just wanted to really ask you, as others said, you don't get to decide the funding, but you do get to decide the amount of money that goes into. Thank you, Councilwoman Alterman, for reading the statement for us. Thank you, Commissioner Langalis, for making sure that we find the information that we need in order to speak in this appointment. Really appreciate it. Aside from being a parent, I'm also the founder of a group based in Norwalk called Latinos Unidos Norwalk, which represents almost 4,000 Hispanic people that live in our area. I can only just continue to press the importance of making sure that funding is assigned so that we can meet the standards of what our Councilwoman Alterman just read. We want that to create the workforce of the future, then we need to invest in in education. We want them to become infinite learners. We have to give them spaces where they can grow and learn as students and make sure that they give a return of investment to the city of Norwalk once our younger generations become part of the workforce. We want to enhance diversity, then we need to support programs that really embrace that diversity in our school system. So again, I understand that this may not be the forum to go through the 13 items, but I want to strongly tell you that I am representing almost 4,000 voices that came to the city as immigrants to enhance the diversity of our town, to work, to contribute to the economy. And in order for these families to be successful, we need our schools to be funded appropriately. So I trust that you will make the right decision to give that funding to our schools. And I thank you so much for your service. I have been privileged enough to serve in a couple of commissions in the city, and I know this is a very hard job as volunteers. Everybody gets angry at you. Nobody thanks you for the hard work and hours that you put in. I am very thankful for your time, and I trust that you will make the right decision for the future of our kids in the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I guess there still seems to be some confusion, and I should correct that. We do not make decisions on how much money any project is allocated. Again, we used to play some role in that, but beginning with last year when the commissions were merged, our role was eliminated and changed so that all we do is look at these items in relation to the POCD. We do not play a role in the funding. But once again, I want to say how much I appreciate the passion of all the speakers, and wish we did play some role, because I would like to support your passion, but it simply is not within our assignment to do that. Anna, you had a question?
Yeah, a clarifying question from me that may also help others. So in terms of the capital budget requests where we're looking to see how they support or conform with the plan of the POCD, there's the request and then there's what the CFO has recommended. Are we looking at the list of everything that's been requested to see if they conform, or looking at the list of what has been recommended? Some things were not recommended at all, some were recommended at lower amounts.
Yeah,
We're-
so, yeah, go
Well,
ahead, Mr. Schuman.
Go ahead,
I was
Brian.
so generally we are operating on a separate track from the CFO. We're looking at all of the requests as they come
All
in.
of the requests. So the
Right.
requests specifically of the Board of Ed that I know many people are concerned about, we are looking at, do the requests as they were put in support or conform to the POCD?
Right.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
All right, next we have Susan Patrignelli.
Ms. Patrignelli, you are muted. There you go.
Hi, sorry, and I apologize because I also have a screaming child in the
That's okay.
background. Susan Patronelli, 3 Rampart Road. I am a mother to 2 young children, one of them in kindergarten at Brookside. I am one of the co-presidents at Brookside Elementary. And I just, I understand that, maybe our understanding of your role here might be a little confused, but I do want to echo the other parents' passion for these Board of Ed capital budget requests. And, I thank the councilwoman for reading that kind of excerpt from the PCOD. And I really have a hard time understanding how any of these 13 items don't apply there. I mean, it is a beautiful vision for the city of Norwalk that is written there. And I don't see how you achieve any of that without investing in our education system and our youth and our children and the safety for our children and dual language programs to bring this vibrant racial multicultural community together. Montessori programs to help the young kids, being one of the only towns in the state of Connecticut with a public school Montessori program. So, again, there's a lot of things here that really they all apply in helping to make Norwalk this beautiful vision that is set out in the PCOD. So I thank you all for your time. I thank you for your service. And, I just wanted my voice heard on record. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have Mary Ellen Flaherty Ludwig.
Please go ahead.
I've just been listening. I'm mistakenly raised my hand, but I do want to commend all of you. I'm Mary Ellen Flaherty Ludwig on the Board of Education, and I live on Soundview Avenue near Brian McMahon. I'm just a comment of admiration for the work that everyone is putting in, but also having been born and raised in Norwalk, I learned a lot about the POCD today, and I'm going to investigate that some more. But thank you for the work you do.
Thank you.
With that, I think we've gone through all the hand raises, Mr. Schulman.
Okay.
Oh, we got one more from East Norwalk Neighborhood Association.
Good evening. This is Diane Cece, Olmsted Place in East Norwalk. I actually was going to speak to 2 items as board president, but I'll actually leave those for the end. So I'm just going to put my own hat on for speaking as a resident and taxpayer. First, I want to say to the chairman, this is a bit confusing compared to past years. So I do think that you need to have patience with putting this new process in. It's not only confusing, but I think that it's left us at a point where we're not really understanding what the public hearing is for. I also want to say before I comment on this process that I too am a bit offended that someone who is that you describe someone as long-winded who was actually addressing specific items in here, and I believe was trying to be thorough and comprehensive in explaining the justification for those items. In the past, as you know, I think this is what you're trying to explain that's different, is in the past, the public could actually speak to the budget items and the requests. And when it was just the Planning Commission, in fact, we had great influence over the dollar amounts. There were many years where we influenced dollar amounts being increased and shift over, other items where the dollars were taken out altogether or reduced. So this is a little bit different in telling us tonight that you don't take that into account. You're just looking at the POCD. So now, in terms of compliance with the POCD, I guess I have a question as well. Maybe you can clarify, because when you do, as the Planning and Zoning Commission now, you've just gone through the process of reviewing every department's requests individually. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time this year to sit through and observe those. But it's my understanding that it's during those meetings that your commission is actually determining whether or not an item complies with the POCD. So I'm a little bit confused as to and why the public comment is limited to saying whether we interpret it differently. There's hundreds of pages in the POCD, as Ms. Langelis just pointed out, and no doubt you guys are aware of this just from zoning work as well. You can find one part of the POCD that supports your argument, and someone else can find another sentence in the same POCD that completely, discredits it. So it is a little bit confusing with this process. And I would ask then, was it part of your purview for you as the commissioners to already determine whether something or complied or not? And then it's just our opinion to go in and point out chapter and verse where we think something should go in. Another comment that I want to make is that in addition to the public at large not having time to go through and analyze all the requests and match it up line for line with what they're referencing in the POCD, I think it's as important for the public and for you as in the Planning Commission role to also understand what's not being requested in this budget in terms of fulfilling the POCD. And I wonder where in your analysis that type of review would have been done to say where are we falling short of fulfilling the POCD because capital budget requests aren't coming in order to do those things. And so now I'm going to flip and put on my other speaker hat. I'm going to go back to East Norwalk Neighborhood Association. So speaking of POCD requests and what goes in and what falls out, if I don't know if staff can bring up on the screen the page for Recs and Parks for Veterans Memorial Park. If you can, I would appreciate that. I just think if you do a find or a search on your screen, you can bring that up. The reason why I'm referencing this, Mr. Chairman, is because this is an example of where you may be looking at this in isolation for the 2023 budget cycle. However, if you did a thorough review, I think you're probably going to find that there are a number of items from the prior POCD. And I really almost wanted to be kind of just facetious and say, which POCD are we speaking about? Because when you look at Veterans Memorial Park in East Norwalk, there has been millions of dollars that were going into the budget in the prior POCD, going back to 2012, where those requests either didn't come in at all, or they came in and they just didn't make the cut in the budget. So now if you fast forward to the 2019 POCD, the concern that I have here is, how is that lining up in relationship to the 2012? But also,
Ms. Cece,
one might have.
you're drifting way off what our role is. And I am perfectly happy to listen to you, but you have to limit yourself just to specific projects and the POCD, not the history of the POCD, but where we stand with the budgets we're looking at now and the POCD as it stands now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Okay, so may I continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so in reference to this POCD and Veterans Memorial Park, I would urge the commission then for you to go back and take a look at what is not in there in terms of the requests, and also take a look at the request and be sure that they're still aligned with with what this POCD is asking for. The reason why I'm bringing up Veterans Memorial Park, Mr. Chairman, is not only because of the history of non-funding of the prior POCD. The other reason I'm bringing it up is because the funding that created those items in both POCDs was either $125,000 or $200,000 study to come up with those. So we can't have these studies going into coming out of a POCD to say study Veterans Memorial Park to make a master plan, and then we don't do anything with it. So that's one point that I want to make. The other point is in terms of in the POCD and in this capital budget, there's an item for planning and zoning department, which is the Norton Park study. And I'd like to point out to you that it may comply with the POCD because there's a part in the POCD specific to the industrial zone study. And of course, Norton fell into that portion of it. But I also want to point out that the recommendations in the industrial zone study to do a separate study for Norton Park was way back in October of 2021. So if you're looking at, does it comply with the POCD and should it be in there? I hope that you're also making recommendations when you pass this, but the capital budget off, and urge that this money actually get moved up and not go into waiting into 2024, which I think is where it's in there right now, because it's already been a year and a half. And so I would urge you then to take a look and if it's within your power to make a recommendation of timing, that you would do that. And in the meantime, as we always do, I know this is off course, but we would ask that until that study gets done and complies with the POCD, that there be moratoriums on the use there. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian, is there anyone else?
Yeah, we had two more come up, so I guess these will be the two last that we take, which would be Rojas.
Okay. There you go.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on here. I know it's a very important night, lots of people listening. My name is Simali Rojas, and I am at 1 Smith Street in Norwalk, 06850. And the reason that I wanted an opportunity to speak is because I would like to just reiterate, as so many people have done, about the importance to fund schools. And I know I'm just echoing, but I just want to really stress that money matters for student achievement. And this is very closely related to how Norwalk is going to thrive as a community. And lovely folks such as you guys all have, you guys are all in a position to be able to support the academic growth of our students with a topic as controversial and diverse as this. So specifically speaking for Silvermine Elementary, I think it's very, very important that we all realize that there is a lot of growing evidence that spending money wisely on education, it just leads to better student outcomes. And so, putting our money where there are high poverty communities, the district and Norwalk overall will thrive. Cutting our budget by millions of dollars is only going to jeopardize our students. And so it is very important to realize that every year we get less and less staff And these are people that are being taken away from quality education that the students can receive. As many have mentioned before, there are a lot of students who are receiving intervention, and the less qualified staff that we have that's able to provide this, it's just going to have a tripling effect into the future of everyone. And so, you know, we're speaking the betterment of field, we're speaking about the betterment of bands and all of that, but overall, it's the quality of the students. You know, if it's not about kids, it's really not about anything, because the education is what's going to help support everything and everyone. So thank you very much. Again, I'm advocating for Silvermine and for that the funds do not be cut back for our children and for our community, and that we really just reevaluate the importance of what we're doing here and what is really important. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, and then our last speaker is Chairman Johnson.
Mr. Johnson, you're muted.
Yeah, how you doing? Good evening. My name is Jeremy Johnson. I live at 322 Highland Avenue. Basically, just read what the school is requesting. Like everybody said, money is a big factor for our children's in the future. I understand that you said more for the comments that I listened to while I was at the meeting is according to use out of the scholar practice, you guys. This meeting is not particular for that part. I do understand that. I guess you have to guide us exactly where do we have to go through, complain, or request this money to be granted for the school education. I just honestly don't have much to say, just because the fact that every comment other parent had done it being literally shut down to it. Basically, that's what I have to say.
Thank you. All right, that's it for public comment. We'll close then the public comment portion of the hearing. Steve Kleppen, any closing comments you want to make?
No, Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything to add.
Okay, and Tammy, as chair of the committee?
No, thank you, Lou.
Okay. Clearly, this is a learning process for all of us. I'm hoping that next year we can provide better education to those people who wish to speak, so that to the extent possible, we can keep people on topic and get useful feedback. Okay, with that then, any comments from members of the commission before we close the public hearing? All right, if not, then we'll close the public hearing. We have a second public hearing, as you know. It's relatively early, but there are probably going to be a fair number of people who wish to speak. So let me suggest we take a 10-minute break, reconvene at 8:04.
Quick question. The second public hearing is the high school?
Yes, it is.
Didn't we close the public portion, the public comment portion of that?
We did, but if there's any new information shared, we'll
so
have to open it to the public for purposes of that
Specific
specific
of
information.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll get back together at 8:04. It's 11 minutes. So let's do that. This is second public hearing, 2022-56 SP, City of Norwalk, care of Building Management, 23 Calvin Murphy Drive, District 5, Block 7, Lots 1 and 10, construction of New Norwalk High School and P-TECH campus with associated athletic fields. We're here to discuss action on the application. But before I ask Attorney Blank to speak, you may remember at our previous hearing, we closed public comment. The only reason that we would consider reopening public comment is if there is new information to be shared. And if there is, then the public can only comment on that new information. We are not going to open this up to general comment again. That was done at our last meeting. With that, looks to me as if all the commissioners are here. So Attorney Blank, you're going to be representing the applicant?
Yes, sir. Adam Blank. I live here in Norwalk for the city and Board of Ed on this application. And I would just want to just say that we do intend to put on some additional, evidence with the hearing reopened for purposes of or left open for efficiency and solar as the only two or one or two, depending on how you look at it, areas that I think the public hearing was left open for, and that's what we're going to comment on this evening. So the last couple of weeks, we did spend some time putting together a presentation for you to give you a better understanding of the efforts that the city has gone through for the new Norwalk High to make it energy efficient and to utilize solar as feasible. And what I want to sort of give you sort of the preamble is to just be clear that the process that you're going to hear about tonight really wasn't something that was done in response to your questions or concerns, that this is done on every school construction project and every every municipal construction project, that this analysis is done. And it runs through the Common Council's Building and Land Use Committee, which considers and hears all the information you're going to hear tonight, goes to them at a public meeting and is open to the public for their comment and consideration. It's not sort of done behind closed doors. And so, it was sort of, I would say, disappointing that there was comments at the last hearing that were sort of personal attacks on Mr. Lowe. And I think that they were unfounded, and you'll hear tonight that all of the efforts that the city goes through on these types of projects.
Attorney Blank, let me just interrupt you for 1 minute. Those ad hominem attacks on Mr. Lowe and other members of the staff were very disturbing to us as well. And I'm not going to permit speakers to behave in that manner again. Should that happen, we will cut the speaker off. And I apologize for not catching that. I apologize personally to Alan and for the commission for not catching that soon enough to stop it.
Thank you. So in just maybe 2 minutes, and I promise I will stop talking. But Mr. Lowe is going to give an initial presentation about the city's process, and then we'll ask Adam Ducky, who's a consultant to the city on energy evaluation and energy alternatives, to give you a presentation, which will be, I think, quite similar to what was presented months ago to the Common Council Land Use Committee and Building Management Committee. And I hope and expect that when we're through tonight, you'll see that and be satisfied, if not impressed, by the efforts the city goes through on energy efficiency and looking at alternative energy sources. But I want to sort of begin, and I don't want to annoy you, but I want to sort of begin by suggesting that on a condition, we hope that you will approve the project, but that we would suggest that and hopefully at the end, you'll understand why I'm suggesting this, but that as a condition of approval, that you make that condition of approval simply that the applicant continue to work with the Norwalk Common Council, specifically its Land Use Committee and Building Management Committee, to continue to evaluate energy conservation measures and the development of renewable energy options for the Norwalk High School project, including rooftop solar as well as carport solar. And I would ask that you try. It's up to you, but I would ask that it be left to the Common Council to work with the city on determining what will in fact be required specifically for energy efficiency, rather than you oppose conditions now that will limit the city on design and implementation down the road, is particularly when this project is not going to be constructed or open for a number of years, and what may be desired and feasible now may change over that period of time. And so we'd ask that it be left in the Land Use Committee and Building Management Committee's hands. And I'd like to just share my screen for a second. So you've got my screen up there. One of the things I'll point out is, so under the zoning, the state statute that gives you all of your authority, and it only comes from this state statute. There's no other authority. So the state statute that gives you authority absolutely gives you the authority to pass regulations that require or promote energy efficient patterns of development, energy conservation. It allows you to pass regulations that provide for incentives for developers who use solar and other forms of renewable energy. All of those things are absolutely permissible for you to consider and adopt in your regulations. The thing of it is, though, in this zone, you haven't done so. You haven't adopted any of those regulations. You have for like the East Norwalk Village TOD, you've put in solar regulations. You've adopted solar regulations with respect to elderly housing, but not here. And so, I mean, again, the city is going to make every effort to install solar and energy efficiencies, but it actually is not in your purview at the moment. It absolutely can become in your purview if you adopt applicable regulations, which has not yet been done. And maybe you'll do that in the zoning rewrite, but there is no solar or energy consideration under the current special permit criteria that applies citywide. So that's, again, another reason why it's more suited for the Common Council Building and Land Use Committee. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alan.
Adam and Lou, thank you for those comments. I think regardless of what we do, I think the first important thing that we'll note that part of the conversation from our last meeting, I decided to write a somewhat kind of long memos, like 5 pages with a lot of backup information, just to show the commission that me as a staff of the city, as well as all the consultant we hired who does lead buildings every day, because all schools are required to meet high performance building standards with the state. Every building they do, it's basically minimum LEED Silver. So it's not something that we kind of want to do, maybe we do. It's something that me and as well as the profession does every day. Every project they do around the state. So it's not an arbitrary thing. It's not something that we have a choice or we encourage some and not encourage. This is a minimum requirement. So it's a pretty good standard that the state has adopted and we're responsible to. I have this long memo here, but I'm not going to go through it because it talks about what the city process typically is and what we do and don't do, how we look at things, and also the exhibit that we provide to the Land Use and Building Management Committee, the Common Council, that they review. And we also talk about each consultant team for each project. We put up their own presentation analysis for each one of the projects. So I attached those for information purposes, so everybody knows the level of detail that we go through and decision process. And in terms of solar renewable energy, the city does an interesting method, which is called power purchase agreement. It's very typical in the industry, but at the same time, we actually lease the system for a company to come in, a solar developer come in to build it for the city. So they are not really a consultant, they are a turnkey developer. So in the sense that if something is not financially feasible, they would not recommend it. It's only that to the interest to do solar projects, because that's how they make the money. If they don't do it, they don't get any profit from it. So typically, when we go for these analysis, when the project is feasible, they want to do it, and we want to do it. There's no reason the city does not want to do implement any project that's environmental friendly and creates financial savings to the city. So I think the memo is there. I brought it back up. When you have a chance, you can please look at it and understand how we operate, and everything go for land use and building management committee. But for tonight, I have Adam Dukey. He's the engineering consultant for us for Norwalk High School's project specifically. So he's going to give you a presentation. It's almost exactly what we presented to land use committee back in, I think, was June 1st of this year. And it talks about all the energy components and all the things that we looked at and what we think is feasible, what's not feasible. So without getting into it too much, Adam, would you please?
Yeah. Before Adam Dukey, before you start, let me just point out for the commission, you mean it. So Alan mentioned this power purchase agreement, right? So one of the reasons why a lot of people will install solar is there are some tax benefits to doing it, and that makes it economically feasible. Because the municipality is essentially tax exempt, it doesn't share in those benefits. And so if it were to install the solar, it wouldn't receive the benefits. By using the power purchase agreement, the developer actually owns the solar, which is leased back to the city, and the developer is able to obtain the tax credits for it, which make it economically viable as a project. However, a consequence of that arrangement is that the solar is not a capital improvement that the city has paid for, and therefore there is no state funding on it. Every penny associated with the solar, the city pays for. It's not like the state's going to pay for 80% of the solar improvements.
And I'm sorry. Yeah, to add to that is that it's better that we don't use a school construction fund to do the solar system, because it eat up our money that's allocated for each school project for school construction, and that budget is based on enrollment. So when we spend money for a solar system, we actually take money away from providing educational programming spaces and things like that, so it affects our ability to implement school construction project or school programming. Thank you. Adam Dukey.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the panel, my name is Adam Dukey from Van Zelm Engineers out of Farmington. I am the MEP consultant for the new Norwalk High School and P-TECH campus, working in conjunction with KBA architects for this project. As a preface to this, as everyone did say, this is a presentation that we did provide to the Land Use Committee back in June. So the presentation I'm going to give you, in all transparency, is pretty much the exact presentation that we gave them, with a couple of comments that I made along the way, because obviously during that time we were still in project development. We are still in project development, just a little bit farther along. So as we go through this, you'll see the process from the beginning to end of various systems that we looked at, from renewable energy to energy efficient systems, and then what we ended up landing on at the end in that process along. I do apologize in advance. I am a design engineer by trade, so I may have to dial myself back sometimes, because I tend to go off in the weeds a little bit when I start doing some discussions, but bear with me, and we will get through this together as a team. I'm going to share my screen so we can look at the presentation together. And please do let me know if you end up seeing the PowerPoint, just so we can make sure we're doing this together. And it should be this guy.
Now we can see it. Perfect.
All right, so I'm doing something right today so far. Okay. So, as discussed, this is a presentation for the alternative energy options for the new Norwalk High School and P-TECH campus. Just a couple of things I wanted to discuss as we go into any project, specifically school projects. There are 5 building blocks as an engineering firm and with our architectural firms that we work with, that we always abide by and must build upon. One is feasibility. In any situation, we want to make sure that anything we are going to propose as a system to the client, to the city, is something that can actually be implemented and is feasible for purchase and building. Simplistic control and maintenance is another big one. We can design a system for the school and for the city that is very technologically advanced, but at the end of the day, someone still has to control it, someone still has to maintain it. There has to be parts available to fix it, and especially in a school where you really don't want to have to shut down because of a malfunctioning piece of equipment, we want to make sure that whatever we are providing can be fixed and has parts available. Programming space, I think Alan touched on this earlier on already. We are very cognizant of the program space for Norwalk School. I will say that Norwalk does have a very robust program, which is very good to hear for a high school environment. But we do have to be cognizant of that when we're developing our mechanical, electrical, and plumbing and fire protection systems to make sure that what we are providing doesn't impede on that program space. Energy efficiency and carbon emissions obviously is a big ticket item these days and will be continuing to be in the future. Everything that we try to design is going to be as energy efficient as it can be. The systems we select work hand in hand with the building envelope and construction to make sure we're right sizing equipment and trying to reduce or eliminate our carbon emissions from our equipment as well. And then finally, I think something we can all agree on is budget. We can design any system that you like, but there is a budget that we have to contend with. So we always want to try and develop a system that's within the confines of not just the budget, but the program in a delicate balance. So moving forward, looking at school, the layout, the open space and real estate available, the systems that we did look at from an alternative energy standpoint were as follows, and they were obviously photovoltaic, PV solar, that's a big one. We looked at geothermal and ground source heat pumps. And again, I'll get into some of these in the details a little bit more down the line. Wind harvesting, cogeneration or a cogen plant, and then finally fuel cells. Looking at the various options with how they can apply to alternative energy solutions, and then also with the program space and the available space within the school. The base systems that we proposed and landed on for the school were a combination of the variable refrigerant system or VRF system with heat recovery in conjunction with an energy recovery ventilator for the breathing air of the school. And again, these are just the definitions. We'll get into the systems a little bit later. That is going to be used for classrooms, administrative areas, offices, any kind of office space, conference space type area as well. In the larger single zone areas like auditoriums and gyms, we're proposing packaged rooftop units with direct expansion or DX electric cooling and high efficiency gas heating. And then finally, in the natatorium or the pool, which again is another big ticket item, the system we're proposing for that area is a packaged direct expansion or DX cooling unit with a pool heating option, which again uses the heat rejected from the cycle to then temper the water of the pool as kind of a free reheat situation. So we'll go through that a little bit as well. So what is a VRF ERV system? Effectively, a variable refrigerant system or variable refrigerant flow system is a single refrigerant circuit that connects many indoor controlling units to one single or bank of outdoor units. So if anybody has a split style system or air conditioning in their house, it's a very similar system from a basic standpoint, but much more efficient and also provides simultaneous heating and cooling at the same time, not using any more additional energy. Why is that important for a school environment? When you have a school environment that's spread out with a bunch of different zones or classrooms, on shoulder heating and cooling seasons, what you find is that on the perimeter of the building, you may have a situation where the school requires some heating, but then the interior of the building, where it's also highly densely occupied, they may still need cooling. Under a typical HVAC system, you would then have to run your cooling units and then kick on your boilers and run your heating system at the same time, thus requiring reheating air and providing two separate systems to be operating. With this system, because it's a heat recovery system, you could be running cooling in one zone, but as the refrigerant runs through the system and comes back, you can also be heating another zone at the same time, not using any additional energy from this system. So this provides an energy efficient heating and cooling as well as humidity control option, gives you individual temperature set points for each zone or group zones. And as we discussed, it has built-in heat recovery for simultaneous heating and cooling, which is great for energy savings, increased occupant comfort, and especially during shoulder seasons. This is just a brief overview of what the units would look like within the classrooms in the building. It would look like a little rectangle or square on the ceiling, or it'd be a ducted unit that you wouldn't even see. So very appealing from an architectural standpoint. Also very, very quiet, which is very important because when these get located within the classrooms, typically the unit itself creates less noise than the air noise coming out of the ductwork. An energy recovery ventilator, this is what's providing the breathing zone air, or all the breathing air to the spaces. Energy recovery ventilators are good because the units are sized for the minimum ventilation requirements per code, which allows us to use smaller ductwork runs within the classroom or within the hallways and coming down from the roof. Smaller ductwork means less cost for ductwork, more available classroom space, less ceiling space requirements. An energy recovery ventilator is effectively just a heat exchanging device or energy exchanging device where, as you're bringing in that untempered outdoor air, could be in the 0 degree in the wintertime or hot in the summertime, there's a cube in the middle that, as you're bringing air back from the building, will exchange that energy and either cool down the air coming from the outside or heat up the air coming from the outside as a free energy exchange. So the only energy that is required to run an energy recovery ventilator is just a fan. There's no additional heating, there's no additional cooling required. It can be added, but we're not using it for this building. Benefits of an ERV system, again, size for code required minimum ventilation, continuous fresh air to the building. These units are also constantly pumping in 100% outdoor air to the buildings. It gives you the ability to purge the building during unoccupied. If you want to just run these units 24/7 to try and purge the air out, it allows you to do that. Again, energy efficient because it utilizes warm indoor waste air to pre-treat the outdoor air coming through the system. And then finally, enhanced filtration options if you wanted to utilize MERV 13 filtration on these units for enhanced infectious disease mitigation. Stepping into the natatorium area, the pool area. This is where we're using a dedicated pool conditioning unit, which is mounted on the roof. This is using, again, electric or DX cooling, heat pump unit with dehumidification. The neat part about this style system is because pool environments require a very specific humidity control, as we're dehumidifying the air and treating the air within the space, that cycle that's happening within the unit creates energy that has to be rejected. Typically, that would be rejected to atmosphere. However, with a pool unit, what we do is then capture that heat into another heat exchanger and use it to treat the pool water. So effectively, we're tempering or heating the pool water from the rejected heat from the unit. Again, this is just a quick picture how it works. So as the warm, moist air is coming through the unit, we cool it. We then reheat it to dehumidify it. This refrigerant cycle, the energy from this cycle, that extra heat goes back through and goes into another coil, and that coil is then treating that pool water. So what that allows you to do is not only give you precise control of the temperature of the pool area, but it also allows you to have free reheat for that pool temperature and doesn't require a separate pool heating unit to run continuous, which saves quite a bit of energy. The only time a separate pool unit or heating unit would be required is if you fully drain or heat the pool. So going back into our alternative energy options, as we discussed, recommended for this school, obviously the big ticket is PV, photovoltaic, and solar. What's not recommended, we'll get into this, is the geothermal ground source heat pumps, wind harvesting, cogen, and fuel cells. And we'll go into each one of those individually quickly. This is just a generic picture of what it would look like on the roof of Norwalk School if full PV was implemented. Same thing with this is if we're utilizing grade mounted PV, a typical picture of a high school environment with grade mounted PV as well. So part of our process with working with KBA, working with the available site to us, as well as, working with Alan and the city folks, is developing a concept for solar to see what we could get for energy from the available space left. And ultimately what we came up with is we could fit approximately 2,200 solar panels on the roof with the available space that's there, which gives us an average of about 1,075 kW of energy. And this is assuming each panel is putting out about 470 watts, which I can tell you almost daily, this increase is based on panel efficiency. So by the time we actually get this implemented, it could be more than this. Going on to looking at parking structure PV, if we were to implement that, there's a potential for about 2,200 panels on the parking structure if we were to fully encompass most of the parking you see here. So underneath all of these solar panels is where cars would be parking. Again, that averages about 1,055 kW of energy collected. So when we look at that as a total, based on a 330,000 plus or minus square foot building, hours used for typical schools about 2,500. Average loading of the building is about 60%. KW hour or KW per hour annually consumed for energy consumed for this building would typically be about 4 million kilowatt hours. Parking lot solar gives us alone about 1.2 million kilowatt hours of energy that could be collected. And the roof PV could give us another 1.3 million, which gives us a total potentially of about 2.5 million kilowatt hours. This equates to about 60 to 64% of the total energy usage of the building. So if you decided to go with parking lot alone, that's 30%. If you went with roof, it's about 30%, which is pretty significant considering the size of the school. What I will mention is over here to the right, this is kind of a note we want to discuss, is at the time we were developing this, the discussion of capital costs versus PPA was still being discussed. Obviously, as Alan mentioned, the way the city goes is typically through a PPA or power purchase agreement. So this doesn't apply specifically to the city for a cost, but what this does apply to is this kind of gives you an idea of what this would cost you or what would likely cost a solar developer for cash out of pocket prior to any incentives. So based on the parking lot and roof dollar per watt cost, which I will say parking lot has increased some in the past couple of months, you're looking at about a $6.5 million investment to provide the solar required for what we showed.
And Adam Tukey, can I just interrupt for 1 second?
Yes, absolutely.
One thing that seems like an appropriate spot to point out, you know, this building, because it's in a sort of a city environment, is not like a single story school.
Correct.
And so although it's a large school, the sort of roof area is small if you were to compare it to a single story school that you might have in a more rural area. As a result, it makes it much more difficult to get to a higher amount or percentage of energy that derives from solar, because you just don't have the roof area for the cells needed to capture more solar.
Can I ask a quick question? Do you have a sense of what's the annual cost for energy at the school, like the current electric bill?
I don't have a current electric bill, so I'm not highly positive what they are currently paying for power.
I don't either. I don't either, because that information is actually Board of Ed running the building, so it doesn't come from the building management.
I was just curious about, you were saying a $6 million investment to get 60% of solar. I don't know how that adds to, you know, how much it actually costs that you guys today.
So the cost for construction, that cost of
No,
construction.
I know cost of construction, but if, you know, let's say it's cost, I mean, I don't think it's actually costing you $1 million or $2 million to power the school, but that's sort of the numbers you start to think about, or I'm starting to think about.
Sure. So again, the other side to look at this is that with a capital cost, and this is something that the solar developer looks at. So I guess why we can reference this is the exact thing the solar developer is going to be looking at as well, is what the payback would be for them. And again, this is prior to incentives. Parking lot solar is about an 18-year payback, which is below the 20-year threshold where you start to think, is this really worth it or not? And then roof mounted solar is about 12 to 13-year payback, which is, well within the realm. So this is something that a solar developer would be looking at themselves prior to any incentives to see if it's something that's going to be worth them investing in, which I believe Alan is already working with a developer to get that worked out. So we'll touch on this quickly. This is the potential current PV incentives. Again, as Adam did state, these really don't get to apply to municipalities because you are tax exempt already. That being said, it's difficult to say because PV incentives are changing on a regular basis, and it wouldn't surprise me if in the near future, maybe municipalities do get included. There are various incentives that do apply, non-residential renewable energy tariffs, as well as netting tariffs, where effectively you're just netting that energy. And then you get paid either by monthly or quarterly based on the energy you're producing versus the energy you're using. And then also there's federal investment tax credits, which in 2022 for non-municipalities was a 26% reimbursement, which is fantastic for solar. If that had applied to you, this would have been a whole different discussion at this point, but unfortunately it does not at this point. But again, I want to highlight that PV incentives need to be reviewed to determine if state projects and municipalities are eligible, because they do change regularly, and it's something that we do try to keep up on. Currently, they do not apply, but that doesn't mean by in the next few months they won't start looking at that.
I think the recent President Biden's plan to for economic initiatives, I think they have included a provision for municipality to be able to tap into tax credit. I don't know too much about it, but I'm researching it right now with our solar developer. Potentially, the city could do this. But it's interesting what you said about the Eversource or incentive money. When I was working on a Cranberry School, the pro forma that we developed is based on $90 per kilowatt hour, I think it is. With the reason, I think as of today, the new bidding process started, and I think there's new rules in it. We were assuming $90 incentive money. It's going to be like $52.
It dropped significantly.
Yeah, so we lost substantially. So I think when we're looking at Cranberry, we're projecting that after 20 years, our savings would be like 300 some odd thousand. It's going to go down to 200 some odd thousand. I don't know the exact number, but it's a substantial change for us with the new regulation and bidding process coming out today.
Yep.
Anyway, please, Adam.
So now we're stepping into a discussion about PPA. So this is that power purchase agreement that Alan had alluded to earlier. So for those who don't know, a PPA is typically a 15 to 20-year contract that a client signs with an energy developer, where the developer is going to create a solar farm on the client's property. The client does not own or maintain the equipment. It's all on the solar developer to maintain, purchase, install that equipment. The electricity is then generated and sold to a wholesale electricity market, and the client ends up paying a fixed amount for the green energy that is produced on their property. So that fixed amount ends up giving them quite an incentive and a payback, in the sense that they're paying less for energy, and they get to claim that they are also producing green energy, which is a good incentive. And the remaining power is then purchased from the grid at the current public rate. The pros to this, again, is there's typically no capital outlay from the client, which is obviously a big pro. The power purchase is green power. Again, that's a great incentive to have. And all the risk and there's a guaranteed rate of return for the client, and all the equipment and the risk performance is on the developer. The cons to a PPA is after the contract, the developer can choose not to renew the agreement and remove or sell the solar equipment, or offer to have the client buy it so they can then maintain it. And the green power rate is sometimes not a significant offset from the current utility power. That all being said, I think we all know energy rates are rising, so I think that's probably going to become a moot point, but that's something we have to monitor.
May I ask, I think probably to Mr. Lowe, what is the other power source, or are there more than one power sources to the school in the current construction proposal?
I think Adam would be in position to answer that. Just to start, this is going to be, generally speaking, electric building. And Adam, will you please?
Correct. So the proposed power, I guess the energy usage is there's going to be two utility powers coming through to serve the building electrically. And the sources of energy that are being used is predominantly electrical, because most of the school is going to be variable refrigerant with the heat pump and the ERVs, which is 100% electrical. And then there are some areas that are going to be utilizing single zone rooftop units that have electrical with a small gas component, as well as the kitchen. I believe some of the kitchen heating equipment will also be gas as well. That's the current proposed solution.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I think what we've been hearing is that heat pumps are very highly energy efficient, and that's what we're using. But at the same time, the technology of heat pump has increased for the recent years. But at the same time is that when we reach certain temperature, there's still going to be a problem, like really cold days. So a supplemental heat source is important.
Yeah, and Alan, Alan, the other issue is that the high school is a area of refuge in the event of emergency, in which case there likely would not be electricity, and so the gas serves as a heating function in the winter months if necessary.
Yeah, we talked about that the other day. It's if the entire building is electric without a gas component, the generator we have to provide to maintain building heat is substantial. I mean, City Hall, it's I think we're 1,000 kW kind of thing. That's going to be a huge generator to support the building in case of a winter outage. But by providing the gas, we're able to run the building somewhat during emergency situation while we don't have to buy such a big generator and service requirement and all that stuff. So it is a balance. So when we go to the evaluation of how little we do, there's some of those things that we consider what are pros and cons for various components of the building that we're working on. We're actually looking at even as simple as an emergency shelter. We want to provide some bathroom, not all the bathroom or showers and stuff in case of emergency. And we actually look at whether we should have electric heat or gas heating. And because each one that affects our generators' ability to supply enough electricity for the generator and all that stuff. So there are very detailed evaluation of how much gas and how much electric of the system we want to put into the building. So there's a lot of discussion about it. I mean, it takes weeks when we talk about this stuff. So
who is the electrical supplier?
Eversource.
Eversource?
Of course, yeah.
So this power purchase agreement you have that you've talked about, Eversource will work with buying extra electricity? Because they don't do that for individuals, I don't believe. Every one of the proposals I've had for solar at my house is a lease.
I think that's I think the information we get, if you want a more accurate answer to your question, I need to bring our solar developer for the meeting. She wasn't able to attend because she all tied up just for tonight. But at the same time is that Eversource does have a net metering program. So what it does is that they put in a meter and we put in, I think that's altogether maybe 3 meters. For different purposes. We talked about this recently, and depends on how much you generate. If the solar load is below our average usage, then we probably use up all the electricity on site. So the Eversource meter never go backward because you're using all the electricity. So you think about spring, summer, and winter time. That's our highest energy electric demand, because even in heating season, cooling season, we run all the pumps and circulators and all the equipment that heats the building. So the shoulder season, spring and fall, that's when we have the lowest electrical load. So if our system rooftop system generate less than what we use, then Eversource meter will never go backward. Right. So
I'm only asking because there was questions asked before as to, I think, how much it was going to save. And I was just trying to do the kilowatt hours, having just dealt with a solar company. And but then the big question is how much does the solar company charge you? And if there's no lease payment, the only consideration they get is the tax credits. That's it.
No. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. The way it's done is that they figure the total cost of the construction. There's 3 sources of financing to go against the cost of the project. One is incentive money. One is tax credit, and the balance they have to raise money to supplement. So among those three pots of money that what they determine is that, look at the screen, is that they charge the city what the electricity to generate on site. They would charge, right now we're looking at Pomona School, Jefferson School, and on Nalmick School. The rates is, I think it's around 6 or 7 cents per kilowatt hours. Okay, so that's what we charge. So in a way, we basically, they build it in a way that we bought. It's almost like a mortgage. We making payment to them based on kilowatt hours of the system that generate. So it assures that they have every desire to maintain the system at a maximum generation so that they can generate revenue to pay back their debt services. I think I answered your question. So
Okay.
Yes, you did.
Anna has
very
a question.
informative.
Anna, go ahead.
Hi. I'm sorry. I appreciate what Adam said about what our role is with the zoning regulation when it comes to sustainability and environment. And I appreciate this detailed presentation. And in keeping with that, I just want to stress that I know that what I was interested in understanding was more about why net zero or carbon neutrality schools either wasn't part of the plan or was it part of the plan. In the materials that you sent out, it says that it hasn't been discussed as a requirement for the Norwalk school project and is not the immediate goal for the project. And I think what some of us just wanted to understand was why not? And
Okay.
if you had talked to other schools, not so much the details behind everything else, but I may only be speaking for me.
Yes, and I totally agree. It's in the presentation, sustainability.
And there's a bit of a contradiction between what's on that page. I'm sorry, there's no page numbers, so I can't cite it, but the page that says sustainability and what's in your original memo where it says the design team was directed to look at the net zero building design with the goal to capture all of the significant and achievable net zero building elements into this project. So was it part of it or not? And if it was, which net zero building designs were part of it? Did you look at other towns that are doing it? So as we've been told, those sorts of questions.
Okay. If it's okay with you, Adam, could you continue? I think we're gonna get to that in a couple more slides later. I know this is a long presentation. This is what we go through with this. We didn't prepare this presentation just for the planning commission for tonight, planning and zoning commission tonight. This is what, again, like we said before, this was presented to a land use committee 6 months ago, 7 months ago. So I know it's a lot of detail and a lot of technical kind of information here. At the same time, we can go for a little bit. We actually talked about it a little later here, as I remember.
Yes.
Adam, if we can just speed up a little bit.
I'll speed up through it and kind of, so one of the options from a mechanical standpoint that we said not recommended for this project was geothermal, because geothermal systems are basically a hydronic system. That's what your baseboard heating, hot water piping, chill water, so on is utilized for. For one, it's a very high first cost to implement, with about $30,000 per well and approximately 170, 180 wells needed to accommodate this. If the whole building was under geothermal and hydronic, it'd be an additional $4 to $5 million for this project. And the real estate required is another significant portion to discuss, because a geothermal well would require upwards of 2 to 5+ acres alone just for the well field, which is somewhat problematic given the phasing of this project, as the existing Norwalk High School has to remain intact while the new Norwalk High School is being built. And then the new Norwalk High School has to be fully functional prior to the old one being demolished. There is no available real estate potentially to be able to put a geothermal well field during that time to make it work, to make it functional during that time. So
a lot of times, just one other thing, a lot of times we try to put those in the parking lot, but the problem is that the parking lot, we will have also the stormwater drainage retention system underground. So that creates another problem for us. And all of this has to be done in the summertime because that parking lot is fully operational, all through construction. And only time we can do any work in the parking lot is during the summertime. So we are very limited in terms of ability to take and work in the parking lot. So anyway, but
So wind harvesting, again, wasn't recommended or feasible for this project for the sheer fact that wind turbines on average need a wind speed of 12 miles an hour to be a functional energy providing device. Looking at the long-term average in wind for Norwalk in the past 10 years has been around 8.5 miles an hour, short terms 8.5, and short-term gusts go from 12.5 to 20. So these are most suitable along the shoreline, but wouldn't be feasible inland in Norwalk. They also can be quite unsightly in residential areas, which would probably run into a lot of oppositions for residential and zoning. And then costly without state grants. But again, just for the sheer fact that they wouldn't perform, wouldn't make them a viable option. Cogeneration, again, cogeneration being a system that utilizes gas to create electrical energy. That electrical energy would then be sized to serve the school. Excess power would be sold to the grid. And then the waste heat would be utilized to create hot water, temper the pool, or use for a hydronic heating system. But as we previously discussed, because we were not designing a hydronic system for this building, there's no use for the waste heat to serve that system. The pool unit itself has a free reheat device to temper that pool water, so we couldn't reject heat to that. So finally, what you're left with is domestic water, which is your kitchen heating, your general water heating for your toilet rooms and such, which is not a consistent load because it's only being utilized at certain parts of the day and certain parts of the year. So cogeneration has not been an applicable system. And then again, similar for fuel cells, this is basically just because of the cost and the payback. If you're purchasing fuel cells outright based on the power required for this building, installation costs for the fuel cells required to be about 6.1 million. Fuel cell costs of maintenance would be about $85,000 a year, which provides a 28-year payback without incentive. And as we talked about, our typical payback is about, if it's above 20 years, it doesn't become a feasible option to look at. So finally, get into the net zero discussion. So what is net zero and how it applies? And I know there's two different net zeros to really look at, is net zero energy and then net zero carbon or carbon neutral. The most common applied is net zero carbon, but we'll talk about both of them so we can get those facts straightened out. Net zero energy facility is one in which the on-site production of energy is equal to or greater than the energy consumed on an annual basis. So this is most typically accomplished by using an all-electric system on site and then using photovoltaic to try and supplement that energy. As we talked about with a delicate balance, trying to maximize on program space, work within the confines of what we have for, the building, the site, and the budget and whatnot. Utilizing a fully electric system for this building was not feasible. So since we do have gas anyway, using the photovoltaic to generate as much energy as we can to supplement the electric seemed to be the most feasible option. But if you wanted to go net zero energy, Norwalk School would have to produce all of its own electricity, likely via solar, and then the whole building would have to be electrical, which for many facilities, let alone a school, is very difficult. Now, the most common application of net zero when people just say net zero is net zero carbon. Carbon neutral and net zero carbon refers to a facility meeting all of its energy usage and energy sources that are carbon free or reducing their carbon output and purchasing carbon offsets to account for the carbon emissions that they are producing. This is the most common because what this doesn't require is any substantial physical changes to a building energy system. So when you see a lot of corporate clients and schools that are existing claiming that they've gone net zero, this is typically what they're referring to because they've reduced their energy usage, they've reduced their gas usage, and they were able to convert to a net zero carbon platform. So net zero energy versus net zero carbon, what does this mean? Well, there's significant overlap between the two, obviously, because the first thing you want to do, no matter what, is reduce or decrease your energy consumption. which always provides steps towards going net zero energy as well as net zero carbon or carbon neutral. Natural gas typically does have a higher emission per unit of energy when compared to electric, which is why when you do use gas, which is still very common, you have to use a high efficiency gas system, and those systems have to be right size, which means the building envelope has to be very well tight, and then we can right size our systems to make them small to make sure we're using the least amount of gas as possible. And that also allows us to reduce our energy or electrical consumption to drive towards net zero. So from that point, once you get all those in line, then you can develop a roadmap to see what's left for capital and prioritize and get you the rest of the way. Now, what does this mean for Norwalk? So this, I think, is where that discussion was kind of leading into. At the beginning of this project is when we hadn't really discussed net zero, because net zero or carbon neutrality is a path that city or client has to commit to prior to the start of any project. And while we're all driving towards being energy efficient and reducing our energy consumption, going green, going fully net zero is an immense commitment that needs to be made. And it's something that we all try to strive for. Currently, and this is where it was, currently the school had not discussed this as a requirement for the Norwalk school, but that does not mean that we don't design with the intent of this in the future. So as Alan said, and this is something that we all have to abide by, high performance, the school has to abide by the high performance building construction for schools, which already brings us up to a LEED Silver application, which makes us very energy efficient. KBA and Van Zelm have been working towards putting the school on the path towards energy efficiency with the high performance building construction, natural light with daylight dimming. The primary heating and cooling system for most of the school is all electric. The larger areas are using single zone electric cooling with natural gas, but it's a high efficient gas system. And then all the water heating systems are high efficient gas or electric where possible. So kind of working backwards, while net zero may not have been like the number one goal for this school set forth at the beginning of the discussion of the project way back when, we've been designing with Alan, with school officials, with KBA, with the future in mind, where the potential to reach net zero carbon or carbon neutral will be attainable in the future. So installing a PV system obviously gets you significantly to that point. A PV system, if applied the way it's been more or less laid out in concept, and it'll be further vetted on with the solar developer, can approximately generate 64% of the on-site energy required, which is a significant step towards net zero. Utilizing the high efficiency gas systems only when necessary produces very little carbon emissions in the sense that the entire school is not gas. And then we can look at getting to that next step in the future, but we already are designing with that in mind. Now, I apologize, I kind of skipped through that because I know we were going a little lengthy, so hopefully that kind of questioned some of it. I know it seemed, some of the presentation seemed like it was contradictory, but just because it may not have been a goal that was set forth maybe by the city at the beginning of this project, we were looking towards every step that we can take within the confines of what we had to work with as a project goal to get there.
And I just want to add, I think, I mean, beginning of this project, I have conversation with the design team. Net zero is not a requirement. I think it's, it's not every building, every project has the ability to achieve that. I think when you're in a suburban area and open land, like Adam Blank said before, with open land and buildings are 1 story high, and when you have a lot of surface area or rooftop area, you can potentially, like this building, we have 31%, 33% potentially of rooftop solar. But this is a 2-story building and spread out. We can double that just by rooftop. So the ability to achieve net zero it's dependent on building location and a whole bunch of issues, so a whole bunch of physical requirements. The same time is that we don't have a requirement to the design team to build a net zero building, but doesn't mean that we are not doing things that very, very energy efficient. We are making this up here. We could be 80% there, but the 20% actually costs you more money to achieve. So it's not financial, it may not be responsible just to get the name that we have net zero building, because it actually costs you more money when you do the last, again, making up the last 10%, 15%, 20%, whatever it may be. But we could be 60, 70, 80% there already. So I think it's finding the balance of how much we do. And I think I still want to just put it out there that, oh, we're not doing net zero building. I think that's deceptive in a way, because we are doing a lot of stuff that's very energy efficient, and we could be, again, I don't know what it is, but we could be 80%, 90% there. It's just the last 10%, like geothermal. We couldn't do it because it cost us $3 million, $4 million. It's not financially worth it. We have to use the savings from the energy saving that we have to cover the potential costs, efficiency, the last 10 or 15%. So I think those are the things that we look at carefully. So it's not like, I don't want to say that just because we don't have a requirement to the net zero building doesn't mean that we're not almost there, halfway there, quarter way there, whatever it is. But we are very, very energy sensitive, but at the same time, we want to balance the cost of the how to get to a net zero building and the cost of it. Again, the last 10 or 15 or 20% may not be cost effective to achieve. So,
All right, Galen, you had a question?
Yes, it seems like Adam is talking about 60% of the energy use being provided by PV. And that I think is terrific. What I heard at the last meeting was that we were going to go with a 30% on the roof, that people didn't want to do the other 30% because it would be ugly. And that's what I heard as a reason. Where are we exactly? Are we at the 60% that Adam discussed in his presentation, which I think I would be delighted with, or are we 30% because
Right.
of aesthetics?
We are minimum at 30%, potential up to 60%. I'm not trying to play games and words with you. I think the copper solar system, there's additional, installing a copper system, that there's additional cost to it because the structural part and the foundation part, and also the complexity with the need to put a stormwater drainage system underneath and the available time to do it. I have to me on behalf of the city and working with the Common Council, we're gonna look at all that stuff, because if it's cost effective, there's no reason why we do not want to do it. So it's really, we can analyze all those factors, construction related, and financially what the rate would be, how much we're going to get incentive and all that. That goes to the evaluation. Potentially we can somewhere minimum, we're going to do the roof, and we are looking at it. I think there's a couple more screens here. We're looking at full system that gets you the 60% or some slightly reduced. The school has also mentioned to us that they are a little bit concerned about security issues and vandalism and people hiding under the system and stuff like that. So there's not a concern that I need to address.
Open system. How can you hide under a roof? There's no sides. You
Well,
can't
let's-
hide under a roof.
Let's not argue that. Alan, what I'm hearing you say is 30% is guaranteed, and you have yet to determine whether the city is able and willing to go to that 60%. Is that correct?
I think it's financially feasible mostly. Yes.
Okay.
It's not again, I just want to say it's not arbitrary decision. It's something that we're going to look at all the different aspects of it. And the Common Council is in position to make that decision. And whatever technical numbers and calculation, financial performance that we get from the solar developer, it's all going to be reviewed by the council, and they ultimately make the decision. Again, the council's, I mean, Tom Livingston is at the meeting right now. I mean, the
Yeah,
council is.
I just raised my hand.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I don't want to cut you off, Alan, and if the chair.
Yeah,
allows-
I mean, the council perspective, I can say that it's consistent, very consistent with the Planning and Zoning Commission. So it's not one body. It's not like have different perspective. I want to stop.
Yeah,
Okay,
if I
Mr.
could.
Livingston.
Thank you. So yeah, just again, background, I am chair of the Land Use and Building Management Committee. And just for reference for everybody, we are the designated building committee for both Norwalk ordinance, as well as the state for school construction projects. And as you saw, we do carefully consider for each project detailed presentation of energy efficiency and conservation measures. You saw one tonight, and thank Adam and his team. They're always very thorough. But I want to assure the committee that we are committed to incorporating these energy efficiencies any way and in all respects that we can. To Galen, your comment about the solar, as I've said to Alan and the team, aesthetics won't pay the electric bills. So, I fully support the idea of getting as much solar as we absolutely can. To Alan's point, there may be a situation, particularly with the new incentives, that we have to do a detailed financial analysis. Typically, the PPAs look at, I think they said 15 to 20 years. We want to look out longer to see what we can do to make sure it is energy efficiency. But we do have to look at it as stewards of the taxpayer dollar. But certainly, our emphasis and our goal, in all respects, is to increase energy efficiency and take all conservation measures, as I said. So, as Alan said, I think we are very much aligned with the P&Z Commission on this, and we will do everything in our power to make sure that we maximize our energy efficiency.
Thank you. Galen, do you have a further question?
No, I just wanted to
I
be
just see your
sure.
hands up.
Tom Livingston has reassured me that the decision will not be made on aesthetic basis. It won't be that we don't go with 30% additional energy use because people think it will be ugly. And that was what I wanted to be assured would be the case. So thank you, Tom. I am happy to have it in the hands of the Common Council Land Use Committee.
Okay. Alan, is there anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay, then let's just move on to discussion ourselves. It's my view, I could be wrong about this, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong. This information is mostly clarification and process, and doesn't really represent new information. And if I'm correct about that, we don't need to reopen this to public comment, because really nothing has changed on the part, nothing significant has changed on the part of the Board of Education building regarding this project. Steve, are you comfortable with that?
It's a little, it's a little bit of a fuzzy area, to be honest with you. I mean, I think if you did, I would recommend a very short leash and try to, very quick comments on things. It's difficult to say every slide. Is there a little bit of new information on there? Did they not see this before? So, I mean, I always try to err on the side of caution in terms of letting the public have a voice, but to your point, it's not necessarily scope change within the proposal.
Chairman Schulman, I mean,
Yes.
on behalf of the applicant, I would urge you to accept public comments. I mean, I've taken one day off so far this year. I would love to be done for the night, but I don't want to create an appeal issue, and I think this certainly would.
Okay, well, I didn't make that suggestion on the basis of expediency. I just didn't see anything terribly new. But that being the case, Brian, if you would explain to folks how they can access the site to speak.
Sure. So for members of the public, if you'd like to speak on the information that was presented tonight, you could use the raise your hand tool. It's at the bottom of your screen. If you're dialed in on a phone, you could hit *9. And with that, I did see, I believe it's Council Member Meek. I'll bring him over.
Okay.
Yeah, Yeah, that's me. I just have a quick question. Looking at the packet materials, I thought we had renderings of what the solar panels look like over the parking lot. And I don't see that anywhere here now. Can we share those and make those more visible to people before we go waste money on a 3D model? Thanks. That's all I have.
Dan, which Dan and I don't think Adam has it, but Dan may have it. Or maybe Adam have. Is Evan Dukey still here?
No, yeah, I don't have it because that was something we hadn't developed. It was something I think KBA might have assisted with.
So Alan, I
You have it, Paul?
Yep. How are you? I could bring up the solar canopies, not specific to this project, but just general photos of. Is that what
Yeah,
we're looking
we
for?
actually, me and Dan, who works with me, we actually went to Fairfield Ludlow to look at that system about two Fridays ago.
Bear with me. I'll try to find it.
Excuse me, Lou, I thought there was a photograph of it in your in the presentation just now that Mr. Ducky showed.
I think the important part is I think that photograph is aerial view, so most people don't see that unless you're inside the building and high up. So I think it's
Mr.
really,
Schulman, do you want to have Mr. Dominov pull it up as part of sort of rebuttal at the end, or go through public comments while it's getting pulled up, or?
Why don't we
how'd you
do
like to
that?
proceed?
Why don't we allow our other speakers to speak?
Okay. So the next we have Ms. Loricella.
Good evening, commissioners. I know you've been sitting a long time. For the record, my name is Diane Loricella, 21 Little Fox Lane in Norwalk. Tonight, I am very pleased that we had a more detailed discussion about some of the features and efforts being made to optimize clean energy, to take a look at there was not much discussion because you did not allow it of green infrastructure and other green measures that I think could be enhanced. And I'll just go back to the council land use to encourage them to consider them. In the meantime, we're talking about the energy work. So I just have some quick questions. I ask that this commission adopt Adam Blank's mentioning of the CG or the Connecticut General Statutes 8-2 paren C as soon as possible, so that our future schools have to have a little more incentive to upgrade energy and other features. I have a question that I hope someone will answer. This is all based on the memo I read that Mr. Lowe put together. It was available 2 days ago, and the backup, some of which was available, as they said, last year. The memo is new and it contained a lot of good information that provided my testimony. I did not see this in the memo as far as the following. Have battery storage been factored in as another way for this school and future schools to be more self-sufficient and not in need of fracked gas, for especially the chance of an emergency shelter? And if not, why not? Did Mr. Ducky and Mr. Lowe and others examine the schools that have achieved and have made the commitment of net zero energy schools? Mansfield and Manchester, I understand, were recommended. On the issue of the net zero energy school, which is on page, I believe it's page 3 of the memo, maybe the bottom of page 2 or 3, on net zero building design. I wanted the commission to know, because it is in the record and in the recordings, I had presented the net zero energy school models that had been developed over 4 years ago to Mr. Livingston at the Land Use and Building Management and Mr. Lowe at their meetings, and that is all recorded and is on the record. So prior to the pandemic, that was a recommendation that I made, and I gave them names of people throughout the state that were looking at net zero, but also doing already 5 to 10 years prior to today, had successfully placed PV not only on schools, but in other public buildings, ground mounted, which is different than canopies and carports. So I just wanted for the record for you to know that one of the reasons for my frustration that my comments is because I, as a good citizen, has been attempting to get the city to look at this for years. And the fact that Mr. Ducky, as the consultant, was not told that the city had that as a, I guess he said, as a goal, is he is not being told the full story. The city itself.
Ms. Lauricella,
Yes.
this is irrelevant. Please stick to the.
I am.
No, you're not. You're going over old history. And
Mr.
that's not
Chairman,
appro-
I'm
that's
trying
not
to be
appropriate.
thorough because most of your commissioners are new and none of them are energy experts. I'm trying to assist them so that they understand the history, so that we don't keep repeating the history. So if you'll let me
But
just
that is
finish.
that is not the purpose of this public hearing. It's to comment.
I'm
on the
looking
new
at Mr.
material- The new material that we heard this evening.
The new material includes the memo that Mr. Lowe authored with the backup material. And I'm just speaking to the memo, the body of the memo, where Mr. Lowe talks about the net zero building and their attempts to answer the zoning commission's questions. So that's what I am following and tracking along that way under process. Then the design criteria. Now, Mr. Lowe, for the benefit of the commissioners who are many are new and are laymen, Mr. Lowe goes over the history of the city's choices in use of solar PV. And the matter is that the policy on when to use solar PV on school buildings and public buildings has not been including any of the policy has been limited to new builds. And again,
We are not speaking about what's happened in the past.
It
We
is
are
in
limiting
Mr.
ourselves
Lowe's
only to this.
memo, and I'm commenting on what is in the memo because it is not completely true. It is just not. So I'm trying to give the background to your layman commissioners in all due respect, because you are being led along a certain narrative about all the wonderful efforts that the city is making. I think the city's making a lot of good efforts, but it's not quite as rosy a picture because of what you've been explained to this today. And I'm just asking, why don't we have battery storage mentioned? And why doesn't anyone who is either in the land use and building management staff, the chairman, Mr. Lowe, or any of the consultants here, including Then Blank, why don't they know how much, how much it
I am
costs?
sorry to constantly interrupt you.
Well,
but
then
we-
please
the
let me
only
finish
new
a
material
sentence.
we're discussing
Please let me finish my sentence.
is the solar voltaic units.
That's
We're
right.
not
That's what I'm talking about.
About other items here.
I
That
am
is not
talking
part
about
of this
what
public
I-
hearing. And if
Mr.
you
Schulman,
don't, Ms.
Mr.
Lauricella,
Schulman.
if you don't stop, I will have to ask Mr. Baker to shut you off.
Mr. Schulman.
And I am sorry for that.
I am speaking about the memo that is the 5 pages that Mr. Lowe provided to your commission, which is new information, okay? And so that's what I'm speaking to. I also wanted to know what is not there is the efforts with ground-mounted solar, because carport solar, for the benefit of your layman commissioners, is not the same as ground-mounted solar. Are there any areas on the entire landscape, even after the old building is demolished, where ground-mounted solar can fit? Two more quick things. I mentioned there are 2 outbuildings that are also being built eventually for this project. The roof area of those buildings could provide additional kilowatt hours, and they are not mentioned anywhere in what was provided this commission 2 days ago. So I ask that that be also addressed. And being interrupted threw me off a bit. Just give me 30 seconds more and I'll find my notes. I went through the 4 different pillars that Mr. Lowe mentioned in his memo relating to process. And throughout this memo, it has been, you've been reminded by the author's own notes that the Land Use and Building Management Committee of the Common Council is open to the public. They thoroughly review everything. And I wish some of you would listen to their recordings. There is not a lot of time spent going back and forth.
Floricella, I am sorry, I am cutting you off at this point. That is not relevant to this conversation. Brian, is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
If anyone else would like to speak, you could use the raise your hand tool. If you're dialed in on a phone, you'd hit *9.
All right, Mr. Blank, we'll turn it back to you.
Well,
Adam, may
Alan,
I?
yeah, go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, I dropped down some of the comments. The first one is battery. We are looking into it. We actually had to talk to Vergy already. Recently, I think there's a program available that you can, generally speaking, get the batteries for free. So we are looking into it. Battery traditionally is very expensive to have. I mean, even I'm not sure making batteries actually environmental friendly kind of a process. But you know, maybe overseas or something. I don't know what. But those are the same thing we're talking about. So it's not like we are aware of it. Again, I think there's money available to do that. But also too, we had to look at if we are generating so much electricity, if we're using all the electricity on site all the time, there's no reason to store it. All right. So again, we have to look at the balance. I mean, if we generate making up here 10 kilowatts and we're using average 20 kilowatt, there's no energy to be stored. Right. So, and then we had to look at weekdays and weekends, and definitely not. I mean, if we use it all up, there's not, again, at nighttime, we're still using the building. So we use it all up. So in any event, we'll look at it. It's not a problem at all, because I think potentially there's some benefit we will see. The question about other net zero building. I know Manfield and I think it's Manchester had 2 buildings recently completed. One actually got a certificate of occupancy recently. The process of getting, I'm not expert in this, so maybe Adam Dukey may help me out a little bit here. I'm not sure your office actually does net zero building, has done them before, but as I understand it, a community like, I think it's Manfield, the building could be designed as a net zero building, but the certification come a few years later. So I don't know how many actually net zero buildings it's actually in the state of Connecticut that's been certified as a net zero. But again, let's go back to my point previously. Even though we don't have a title out there to try to do a net zero building, but all our effort is trying to get there. So I think that's very important to note that because of the type of building it is and the configuration, site restrictions and everything else in the urban city, it's much harder to get to net zero. So again, I want to be financially responsible to the taxpayer that we're not throwing money away just to get to net zero. Meanwhile, we're spending money on the equipment that's we can't maintain or things like that. So it's something that we are conscious of. But just again, just because we don't put a price tag out there and say we're doing net zero doesn't mean we're not taking advantage of all the benefit of a substantially elements, some substantial elements that almost get to that point. So again, I want to make that point. And also, if you want to find out more of it, I think it's better for your staff to look into it than I am, because I don't want to sound like I'm misleading the commission when I get information back. I did talk to the builder, construction manager for the Manfield projects, but again, I don't want to misspoke in terms of what they feel about the project itself. So I think that's a different research. I shouldn't be coming from the applicant. Ground mounted and carport system. We are actually looking at ground mounted system for South Norwalk School. I think ground mounted needs open area. So like Cranberry School, there's really no open area. We put the building on a softball field, and then we're going to tear down the building. We're going to put a softball field back in. We're not about to cut down wetland area. I'm not exaggerating this. You can see the wetland map that we have for Cranberry School. So we're not going to go into the woods and cut down trees just to put a solar system on, right? That's kind of, I don't even want to say that. So I take that back. I'm sorry. That's not right. My fault. But I think we're going to look at property that's open, that has no trees and stuff on it. I think South Norwalk School had that potential because there's an area, an upper portion that we most likely would not be able to use it for recreation use. So we're looking at it. But there's another challenge, South Norwalk, because South Norwalk, again, did nothing to do with this Norwalk High School, but because the question about ground mounted. When you look at South Norwalk School, the utility company is South Norwalk Electric Work. They do not have an incentive program, established program. So we've been talking to them about it. They may do a special funding relationship project with us, but at the same time, there's no energy incentive that SNU gives to the city or anybody. So financially, to do solar system at South Norwalk School is much more challenging to make it financially feasible. So I just want to keep that in mind. So again, we are looking at a ground mounted system plus a rooftop system at the South Norwalk School. That should be coming to the commission probably in about 3-4 months or so. Lastly, the question about old buildings. We had a look at City Hall.
Oh, Alan, I think it was outbuildings, like the.
Outbuilding. I'm sorry. I
building.
I wrote it wrong. Outbuilding. Yeah, we're looking at it. Those buildings are very small. So imagine the concession building. It's smaller than a house, the size of a garage or so. And also, they're not flat roofs, they're pitch roofs. So it's only one side of it is eligible for solar panel. We also have to look at the orientation of the building, and also because it's so small, by the time you put the equipment so far away from the main building, it will be a separate system. So by the time we put the head end system in, it may not be cost effective to put 10 panels on or 6 panels on, whatever it is. We will look at it. That's not a problem. I mean, if there's money to be saved. But the other thing too is that those two buildings are not using energy because the concession building, they probably use it 5-6 games a year for football plus some of these other events and stuff. So we got to look at it with how the utility companies go look at it, whether we would do a net metering and all the equipment goes with it. All that need to be considered. So again, we will look at it and whether we'll do it or not. It really depends on whether the utility company will work with us, whether financially it works. And the other piece, I don't want to sound like I'm trying to find ways not to do things, but when one-story building, we find vandalism is a problem. In Cranberry Park, kids actually jump on the roof and stuff. So those are the things that we consider. Whether, again, I'm not trying to find reason why you don't want to do things, but those are things we do look at. One-story building tends to throw rocks at it and stuff is much higher. So those are things we consider. And that's it. Thank you. Adam,
this is Adam Van Zelm. I want to point a couple things in real quick. One is, yes, I mean, if there's one thing I can say about Alan is probably 3 times a week, we get phone calls about the what ifs and what if we try and put panels here, or what if we try and do this as a system, and what if we're constantly working with Alan to try and find ways to, instill more energy efficient systems as well as more panels. We just had the conversation again, I think, about the concession stand just this week about it to see how we can work it out. And that's one thing that Verity, the third-party consultant, is going to look at, is not just the areas that we recommended, but also areas that they potentially see as a good use for solar. Because the more solar they can fit on the site, the better off they're going to be and the more the incentive they're going to get as well. So it pays for them to look at that as well. The thing about this site is I don't have a site plan to show, and I think it's been shared plenty of times across the land use. There really is not a lot of open, like grassy area left to be able to place ground main solar on this. It is, yeah, if you look between the field, the new football field, the softball field, the school, the parking area, everything, there's these little blips and blurbs of grassy areas that really don't bode well for these broken up solar systems. If there was one large open area that we could potentially do it, it would get looked at. The issue is the one small area that potentially has some grass is at the top tip, and it's the furthest away from the school. And by the time you derate the equipment and the cable and get back to that point, the juice isn't worth the squeeze for the solar. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah, that's really for track and field sport. They have a javelin and
Correct.
stuff over there.
So like this Norwalk school project has fit so many pieces and parts on this one small site that there really is no more open grass area left to be able to try and place ground mated. Otherwise, it would be a viable option, absolutely. That's not to say that maybe something doesn't come up and it's in constant review to see how much we can apply. And I know Verigy is going to do the same thing, the solar contractor. But at this time, it doesn't seem to be feasible.
Thanks, Adam.
Okay,
I think that's it on our end. Yeah.
okay. Questions from the commission members?
I have two quick questions, Lou.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. Would the solar system that you're proposing, if you do the maximum, would Norwalk High School then have the largest solar field or, amount of equipment of any public building in Norwalk, or do you know of any private buildings that have that much?
I can't answer that because I don't know.
There is a net
yeah.
zero building.
Is it the one up on Route 7?
Not oh shoot, behind Glover.
Yeah,
Sure.
right, that new kind of funky
Yes.
building, right,
Yeah,
okay. But that's
exactly.
tiny. That's
But
a
they
lot
were-
smaller.
I have the feeling they were working with an almost unlimited budget when they put that building together. I mean, they're
Yeah.
actually able to sell some power back to the utility.
The movie theater on Westport Avenue, that building's got quite a bit of solar. I don't know if it's more or less, but that's got a ton on it.
Okay. Thank you. And then the other question, do we know, does Brian McMahon have solar? That's a big roof.
Brian doesn't. Brian was constructed back in 2004.
Mhm.
So there's no solar system in that building.
Okay, thank you. So really no other public school in Norwalk, but then the South Norwalk, the new school will potentially have.
I'm sorry.
solar?
You're talking about, so we have it at Narrow School. We have it in Pona School. We have solar in Jefferson that we recently finished. We are currently submitting a bid to the to Eversource to whatever for Cranberry School right now. So we're looking at put a system in Cranberry School probably end of this year. So I mean, without any regulation requirement on the zoning commission side as well as city side, we are doing these projects. So it's not like I mean, it's not like we are not doing solar system. In fact, the Common Council Land Use Committee had a policy to staff that for all new construction projects, we will include it. And for existing building, we actually look at Norwalk High School and City Hall. Because of structural reasons, the solar developer did not want to do it because they have every interest in doing it because it's it's profit making for them. But based on their analysis on the roofing condition, structural condition, they do not want to do it because the structural analysis part of it is just so intensive. They got to rip out portion of the building, figure out how the structure is made. They got to get structural engineer to analyzing what the load is, existing load is, and on and on. So again, we actually have an agreement with Green Skies, which is the solar vendor, to actually do those two places, and they didn't want to do it.
Okay, and in general, is the city pleased with where it does have solar? Is it working? It's a positive?
I cannot answer that. The reason being is Nanomic School is a very small system. And then Pone has been in place about, I would say, about a year and a half. And Jefferson's only about 6 months. And also see what happened is power purchase agreement, the city initiated the process. At the end of the day, the Board of Education actually signed the agreement because the payment for the kilowatt hour is paid by the Board of Education's operating budget. So they are the contracting party and management of those agreements. So I can get that information to you sometime in the future just for information purposes from the Board of Education who run the facility. I don't have it because I don't manage those buildings.
Okay, that's all right. Thank you. I was just wondering in general, Alan. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
sure. I can provide to you as separately as as a citizen kind of thing, not as part of the commission if you're interested.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Other questions?
Luke, can I jump in with two things? One, Alan and company, thank you for the thoroughness tonight. I know I appreciate you guys going through all that. And then this is more just like an observation and more, this is probably more for like Tom and those else on council, is like, I feel a little hands being tied here without having something of the city of Norwalk saying we have XYZ goals for, carbon neutrality or things like that. I know y'all are working on that. And, I know there are things in the works, but this is like a perfect case in point of if we had that in place, this conversation, I think, could have been very different and could have been clearer from a lot of people from the start. So thank you, Tom and co. I know you guys are working on that and I look forward for that coming down the pipe.
Yeah, just if I could, yeah, we are definitely working on that. It's looking at broadly over the city, and it's not going to be anytime soon because, as you know, it's very complicated, but it's in the works. And as Alan said, it is at least in the land use, that every new building, and actually every renovation of building, we look at solar as well. So it's our policy there.
Okay. Anything else? Steve, can you put up the resolution on this?
Sure,
And
Brian's got that.
in order to enable conversation, just to enable conversation, can I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Okay, Nick has made the motion. Is there a second?
I second. This is Darius.
Okay, Darius seconds. Now let's take a look at the motion and discuss it.
Re5, Steve, I know this will be probably a topic with the rewrite. Is it worth us considering elements of bringing that, not for today's conversation, but forward potentially into the regs prior to the rewrite fully going through? If this topic is going to keep coming up and we're going to keep hitting this, given we do have the right, it's just not currently in the regs.
Well, I mean, not to open this up, I think you have the right to place conditions as you feel appropriate on a special permit application.
Yeah, but Nick, to adopt it at this point really doesn't make sense. It would require a separate public hearing prior.
I don't mean for this case in particular. I meant like
No,
after
I
this
understand. Just going forward between now and the time that we adopt new zoning.
Mhm.
We'd have to go through the whole public hearing process. We'd have to adopt the language, it seems to me, for us to do it as part of the new zoning regulations, despite the fact that that's going to be a bit of a headache for us.
Mhm.
But Steve is correct, as being suggested here on number 5. we can make similar recommendations on other projects where we're not satisfied with the solar content of the project.
Thanks.
I like number 5.
Yeah. For sure. It's definitely stronger than what it was.
Yes.
I don't know if this would be useful at all, but I'm wondering if it could include some language speaking to what Alan had said the goals were, that we recommend that the Land Use and Building Management Committee continue to improve on the sustainable elements of the project with an effort to get as close to net zero carbon neutral as possible as conditions change over, because as he said, this isn't happening for 4 to 6 years. Things are going to change, that we want every opportunity taken to bring it close to that. I don't know if that's meaningless. I don't want to put it in there if it's meaningless, or I wouldn't want to propose putting it in there if that's meaningless, but
Steve, you have a suggestion on language that would address Anna's concern?
Yeah, Brian's much quicker typer than me with this. so,
Okay.
But yeah, I think we could almost take your word close to verbatim and add that as another recommendation and consideration. I just do it as a separate, yeah, however you want.
I don't know if it's appropriate for me to say anything, but
No.
the Land Use and
Sorry,
Building
Tom.
Land Use and Building Management Committee is a committee of the Common Council, which is the ultimate decision maker under the city charter. So, I mean, I'm glad that we will make the recommendation, of course, but ultimately it goes to the council. Don't want to complicate things, but legally, I mean, Adam, Steve.
Yeah, sorry, we gotta, technically only the commission at this point that can
Okay.
speak. Sorry, Tom.
No, I know.
You stuck, Brian, or you need some help?
I think it should be adopt the goal, not make the goal,
Or consider one of the two.
right?
You could also say a goal or additional improvements toward achieving net zero during the implementation and construction of the project, something like that.
and it's net zero carbon neutral, right? Specifically, not net zero energy, as Adam so clearly described. Right? There's different.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it might need a little more finesse than what it's there, but
Well, we'll authorize you to improve the language as you see fit.
yeah, we won't add anything additional, but we'll just.
Come up with something. I have a child on my lap, so hard to think.
Excuses.
Yeah, we've got to do something about all these children.
Well,
Well,
send
they
them
gotta
to
go to
you,
school
Liz.
somewhere.
Okay.
Looks good to me.
All right, is that generally acceptable? We ready to vote? Is there additional discussion? All right.
You did close the hearing, Mr. Chairman, correct?
Mr. Chairman is not certain he closed the hearing, so the hearing is officially closed either for the first or second time. Let's do a roll call.
Steve, could you just put the resolution back up and at the top so I could see the top again, please? Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Tammy?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, then let's proceed to the roll call vote.
Brian, do you want me to do that or are you able to do it?
If you could, that'd be good.
Sure. All right. Okay, I'll start with Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Cantor,
Yes.
Ms. Tabachnik,
Yes.
Ms. Wells,
Yes.
Ms. Langalis,
Yes.
Mr. Patches,
Yes.
Mr. Rowena,
Yes.
and Mr. Schulman.
Yes,
That's unanimous. JJ had to leave the meeting. She wasn't feeling well, so.
okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to approval of the minutes of our last meeting, January 18th. Do I have a motion to approve? Tammy has moved. Is there a second? And Darius seconds. Let's do a show of hands. All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay. Comments of director?
Steve, you're muted. And also, was there another set of minutes that we might have had to accept?
No, I think it was just the last meeting.
Was there one we missed though from 2 meetings ago? I don't think you got the minutes.
If so, I'll forward for your next
There
meeting.
were,
My
there were two
apologies.
things. I thought there were 2 minutes in the packet.
Executive
The
session.
executive
Right, the
session.
executive session.
Do we need to act on those? Is it appropriate to act on those?
Yeah, technically,
Whatever.
because you held a special meeting technically it has its own minutes to go into the executive session. So technically, I guess it's 2 separate motions.
Okay,
So
and
that
can
was,
I have a motion on the executive session?
well, just a comment, if I could, Lou, because at the bottom of that, it said that the executive session meeting was ended at whatever late time it was, like 9:30 or something. I'm trying to pull it up. And we closed that meeting, so maybe it's just a technicality, but it only lasted an hour because then we went to the next meeting.
Right.
So I don't know if it matters, but anyway.
Well, if the time is incorrect, then let's approve it with the correct time.
Okay, so it
Can
was like 5:59 or something like that.
Oh, no, it was earlier than that. We took a 10-minute break, so it was more like
5:50.
5:49, yeah.
Okay.
All right,
If it changed like that, can you spell my last name with N-E-C-K? I had emailed Brian. I don't know if that change got made. Put it-
absolutely. That
NECK.
change can be reflected in the minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting? And Nick moves, Tammy seconds. All those in favor with a show of hands? Okay. Any abstentions?
I'm going to abstain. I didn't see it.
Oh, okay.
I didn't see those minutes. I must have missed it.
I believe it was just a one pager that said who was in attendance and
But Darius, you and Richard abstained?
yes.
Okay. Well, Steve, comments of director?
Sure, I'll be super brief. I sent out an email a couple weeks ago about training offered by Connecticut Bar Association. I think it's the first weekend for Saturday in March.
March
I
11th.
think March 11th or so, that's second Saturday then. I think 5 or 6 people responded they were interested. Last call for anybody who might be interested that didn't RSVP, let me know and we'll get you registered and handle the payment piece of that. Second piece is speaking about the capital budget. I was thinking something that might help for next year would be for the subcommittee to get its work done before the public hearing, and that way we can publish the findings of the subcommittee to say, you found all these items to be consistent, you found these items to be inconsistent. That way the public actually can comment on those recommendations that you made versus just commenting on things that they want to see happen in general. So maybe that adds a little more fluidity to the process and makes a little more sense. We can work out the schedule next year, but we'll just have to figure that piece out. Speaking of scheduling, the One Cemetery Street application is going to be coming around this month. I don't think it's quite ready for your February 15th meeting. It might make sense. I imagine there'll be a good amount of public interest in that meeting. So maybe look at a special meeting on like February 22nd, which is also a Wednesday. I'm trying to line up the schedules with all the parties involved to see if they're available, but maybe it makes sense to look at that night and just do that meeting and get that out of the way. But I can send around an email to confirm dates, times, and availability. And just a quick update, the zoning regs, last edits are just about done. I've said that a few times now. So the latest version, the latest version of the last edits are just about done. So the plan is to get the consultant the package next week and then see how long it takes them to wrap that back up. And then we'll restart that time clock.
Steve, I have 2 quick questions if you have a minute.
It's up to you. It's 9:45, so your call.
About the first question is about the seminar. Is it permitted to register for that and do selective sections of it?
Yeah, I don't think it's virtual, so they'll give you the Zoom link or whatever the platform is, and then I think you're not bound to sit there through the whole thing. Just a reminder, you're required to do.
Some aspects of it I'm not interested in, but there's some that I.
Yeah, or if you got something else you got to do, someone's making you do the dishes or something, so you can go. What you got to do? But
my dog
are
makes
just
me for a walk.
Yeah.
So
You do have to do the 4 hours of training.
My other question is, I'm assuming that before we have our next hearing on the cemetery project, that there's going to be more interaction between your office and the developers before we get there. And I was just wondering to myself, is it possible for the city maybe to speak with the developer about joint venturing the development of that park area so it could all be done at the same time?
Yeah, I had another meeting about that today with Rex and Park Department, how to move this forward. So we're kind of and that's something else I had conversations with the applicant about as well to see how we can kind of facilitate this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, the renderings, were pretty spectacular, but that's only going to look like that when the whole thing is done. Because I was walking around down there, and it's it could be great.
Yeah. What we're kind of thinking, and this is not it hasn't been agreed to by anybody or settled in stone. We'd like to. There's a grant application that's pending that we think could handle the funding for the construction of that and the materials and the construction aspect of it. So we were hoping to get that filed very shortly and then work with the owner on access and then having them help with the design piece of it. But again, that's just discussion, hasn't been settled yet.
All right. Under comments of commissioners, Nick, you want to just give?
Yeah, just quickly, the latest on the South Norwalk resiliency thing. There was the public hearing a couple weeks ago. I think it was fairly well attended. Steve, I think you were there. I don't remember who else on the commission was there. So I think that was a good turnout, a lot of public participation as well. And then so I think there's going to be some more of those coming up, as well as some more meetings. So and more just we're just waiting on the next step there.
And Tammy, you want to comment on the capital budget?
Sure. The four of us heard all of the various department heads and their requests. And yes, some of them didn't actually fill in the number for the POCD, but that's sort of to be expected. Personally, I found it pretty amazing how much things cost these days in the city, but I know that's not our purview. But just to give you two examples that you might just find interesting, a new snowplow costs $995,000. So $1 million for a plow. And they want to put a redundancy system for the air conditioning at Brian McMahon. It does have central air, but it breaks down frequently. And the budget number that they gave for that was $7 million. And that's just one AC system. So when they were throwing out numbers like, oh, $3 and $4 million on some of this solar stuff, I'm like, that seems pretty darn cheap compared to the redundancy system that they're going to ask to install at Brian McMahon High School. So anyway, and I just want to say too that, you know, the people that called in tonight, I don't know why we wouldn't expect them to have said exactly what they said, right? They don't really understand, and the process seems a little flawed. Like I felt like it was a waste of everybody's time, quite frankly, because if we have no say over any of this, except for to say, oh yeah, it meets the POCD. Well, most of the things out there meet the POCD. Why are we asking people to call in and tell us? We should just say, write to your common council member, write to the mayor, and write to the Board of Ed. So I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but it really.
I do.
I do.
I agree.
And what I think Steve's proposal was really good, but also understand for those of you that aren't parents of school children, that a whole lot of parents got emails just a few hours ago from their schools or PTOs that described what was happening tonight completely wrong.
That's the process the way it used to be. So I think we need to get the message to the Board of Ed to tell them not to do that. I think going forward, maybe it might require like a piece of the charter revision is to not hold a public hearing on this at your level, because it just doesn't make sense. I think it's something to take out of the process.
Well, also, it seems like because the CFO's recommendation came out today, and today is when the public hearing is, in these emails, they conflated the two things and said, we just found out that this is what they want to fund versus what we wanted to fund, and therefore you should go to this public hearing. Like, so, yeah.
I'm surprised there wasn't more people.
Forgive the parents.
I mean, I do. I think it was a shame because they wanted to speak out, but really it isn't even like, why are we even listening to them? And I'm happy to hear what people have to say, but it's so frustrating that really what we're doing, Lou, now, it's not what the Planning Commission did, because the Planning Commission actually made recommendations, and we aren't making recommendations. We're just saying, yeah, it meets the POCD. And I mean, it's like a rubber stamp.
I don't disagree. But it was it was a waste of time. It was very nice to hear all those parents speaking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and in a way, it's really nice for the four of us that heard all of the things that the department has want to do, and they're all passionate, and they all have good reasons for why they want to do what they want to do. And I really like hearing what's going on in the city. But of course, we could find, somewhere in the POCD that every single request meets the POCD. It's too vague. So, sorry to rant, but it's just,
You're
I feel
absolutely
like,
right.
we spend a tremendous amount of time listening to people and then we can't do anything about it anyways. So, you know, I think we should change the process.
I just have a
ahead,
question.
Darius.
The commission. So how do you all as members of the commission feel about the new way we go about the budget season versus the prior way of going about the budget season?
Well, Tammy's the only holdover at this point from the,
Yeah, I mean,
From the
Mike
planning commission.
Newshack was on it and.
Oh,
so
Mike
was
too,
Steve
yeah.
Ferguson, but Mike isn't here tonight and Steve isn't on the commission now, so. But it was a really, I mean, it was arduous. Steve sat through a couple and Mike Rin was there and we really worked the numbers and then made a recommendation to Mr., what's his name?
Afterwards?
Yeah, Dakowitz, to the CFO. And then he went back and, you know, counted his
But
beans and talked to the mayor, and then they came back to us again. And then we had kind of another go round to say, okay, fine, if this is the number you're cutting it to, then we really think that these projects are the ones that we really want you to focus on and refund those and, you know, don't fund something else.
I think the downside of what happened though was that at the end of the day, your recommendations were largely ignored.
Okay.
Planning
well,
Commission's budget.
So Steve, in a way, all we have to do is say, yeah, this follows the P O C D. What recommendation is that? That's like nothing.
Or what happens if we say, no, it doesn't? Like, what
Well,
happens in the
That's
converse?
the bigger question.
True, but
And
Nothing, right? I think there is
there are a
nothing.
couple of incidents of that, at
Yes.
least in my view, based on the review.
yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I
would
forgot what
agree.
the wording is, but there's a trigger within the, I think it might even be within the ordinance that talks about that. I have to read that again.
By the way, for those who might be interested, Steve Ferguson is moving to the ZBA.
Oh. Cool, good for him.
All right, any other comment before we adjourn?
I just ask, I assume there's history behind this, but is there a reason why public comment doesn't have like a time limit for each comment?
From my understanding is it's not allowed.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. it's
Yeah, I
not
mean,
the-
I met with the mayor today and he said, well, you know, the Common Council allows 3 minutes, the Board of Ed allows.
Yeah.
But planning and zoning is not permitted to do that.
It's so
No, we
interesting.
asked
Ms.
the attorney
Lauricella
last week.
spoke for 1 hour at the last meeting.
Because it seems
Yeah,
like it
we-
will be better than interrupting people. Like I know you don't want to do that. And
Well, I didn't interrupt her because she was speaking too long. I
oh
interrupted.
no, I know.
Oh.
But I mean, if there was a 5-minute limit or a 4-minute limit, even if somebody went off topic,
Right,
it's not so
Yeah,
much
we-
of an issue,
that's right.
right?
We asked the attorney that's reviewing the draft zoning, he's a land use attorney, an expert in this, and he said, you don't have the authority to place a cap or a time limit on speakers. He said, some communities go, all right, we'll give you an opportunity, we'll give you 3 minutes to talk, and then once everybody else is done, if you want to talk some more, then you can come back and speak again. But I see that being potentially more problematic on
For another
larger
3 minutes.
applications.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure. If there isn't anything else, can I have a motion to adjourn? Hector moves, Darius seconds, Tammy seconds, Galen seconds. All
I
those in
think-
favor?
That little Anna, your baby's so precious.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Your two.
Our next
Be well,
meeting,
everyone.
2 weeks from today on the 15th. I'll be happily cross-country skiing, but I have permission from my family to attend the meeting.
Oh, Lou, you should take some time off. You're too good.
I may be able to squeeze in a suitcase, just.
I'll be in Florida, but I'll come to the meeting.
Good.
Okay,
See you
Good
on the
night.
15th.
I'm leaving the meeting.
Thank you, Steve and Brian.
Have a good night.
You too.